Chapter 4350. But this time, the unlucky one was not Chang Qitian, but the arrogant Qi Wenhan. No wonder he was so angry just now. He couldn't help but laugh. Ah, good. Qi Wenhan has his day. Wei Xiaodong is a wonderful person. In front of Qi Wenhan, Chang Qitian had never been able to gain any advantage. He was not Qi Wenhan's opponent. No matter how arrogant and conceited he was, he had no choice but to admit this. But looking at it this way, everything had its vanquisher. In front of that old fox Wei Xiaodong, the arrogant Qi Wenhan was also helpless. Let's go to the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Chang Qitian decided immediately. Yes. But young Master Cheng, why are we going to Hong Chamber of Commerce? Do we need to bring people? Chen Zixio quickly replied. Bring people? Bring what people? We are not going to stand up for Qi Wenhan. Why will we bring people to the Hong Chamber of Commerce? Chang Qitian curled his lips. Then we are. Chen Zixio couldn't keep up with Chang Qitian's thoughts. You're so stupid. Chang Qitian kicked Chen Zixio's face in front of everyone. He then pretended to be profound and said, The enemy of my enemy is my friend. This move of mine is called killing with a borrowed knife. Yes, young Master Cheng is brilliant. Chen Zixio quickly smiled apologetically and climbed up from the ground. But in his heart, he was disdainful. You want to deal with an old fox like Wei Xiaodong with your little IQ? You won't even know if you get betrayed. You'll probably be happy to help others earn money. Killing with a borrowed knife? Without further ado, Chang Qitian brought Chen Zixio to the Hong Chamber of Commerce and requested to see Wei Xiaodong. After all, he was the young master of the Poison Mercenary Group and was the most troublesome local bully in the area. The shop assistant did not dare to slight him and respectfully invited the two of them to the guest hall. Oh, young Master Cheng, what a rare guest. After a while, Wei Xiaodong came out with a smile. Haha, shopkeeper Wei, long time no see. How have you been? Chang Qitian smiled and cupped his hands. While smiling and exchanging greetings, Wei Xiaodong was puzzled. Why did this guy suddenly come to see him? In the verdant arc-territorial waters, the Hong Merchant Group was considered an external force. They had always been neutral and minded their own business with the other forces. Even a local tyrant like the Poison Mercenary Group didn't dare to have any ideas about it. Therefore, they didn't have any business dealings with each other, but they also didn't have any enmity with each other. Basically, they were just acquaintances. May I know why young Master Cheng has come to my Hong Merchant Association this time? After some small talk, Wei Xiaodong went straight to the point. Actually, it's nothing much. It's just that word has spread outside that the Equal Heaven Escort Agency has been extorted by shopkeeper Wei. That's why I'm here to pay you a visit, Chang Qitian answered without hiding anything. Even Chen Zixio, who was behind him, couldn't help but put his hand to his forehead when he heard this answer, let alone Wei Xiaodong, the person involved. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? Since he wasn't here to pick a fight, how could he speak like that in front of the other party? What do you mean by that, young Master Cheng? As expected, Wei Xiaodong's expression darkened. He said unpredictably, This is the Equal Heaven Escort Agency's breach of contract. I've been doing everything according to the contract. These rumors were spread by the Equal Heaven Escort Agency themselves. How could you believe them, young Master Cheng? Could it be that you're here to stand up for the Equal Heaven Escort Agency? That can't be right. As far as I know, young Master Cheng and Qi Wenhan have always been enemies. They've always been sworn enemies. The grudge between the Equal Heaven Escort Agency and the Poison Mercenary Group, especially the grudge between Qi Wenhan and Chang Qitian. Any random local on the streets of Verdant Arc City could talk about it for 3 days and 3 nights. This was a well-known fact. Haha, shopkeeper Wei is right. Qi Wenhan and I are sworn enemies. Moreover, we hate each other to the bone. If he doesn't die, then I'll live. Chang Zhuqian laughed heartily. Wei Xiaodong did not know whether to laugh or cry. If he doesn't die, then you live. Aren't you the one who has the last laugh? Everyone knows that you, young Master Cheng, will always suffer when you meet Qi Wenhan. Is this confidence or stupidity? Then, young Master Cheng, what are you here for this time? Wei Xiaodong's expression softened a little. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Even someone like Chung Kitien understood this principle. Naturally, he understood it as well. It's very simple. I want to join forces with Shopkeeper Wei to think of a way to trick the Equal Heaven Escort Agency again. Chung Kitien said excitedly. Every time he had a conflict with the Equal Heaven Escort Agency, he had always suffered losses at the hands of Chi Wen-han. It was impossible to fight them head-on. However, this incident had given him some inspiration. If he wanted to deal with the Equal Heaven Escort Agency, Chi Wen-han, and that Ling Yi, there was no need for him to fight them head-on. He could totally be like Wei Xiaodong and plot behind their backs. Oh, Wei Xiaodong's eyes instantly lit up. His interest was piqued. He immediately said, "Come, come, come. Young Master Chung, please come into the inner hall. Let's discuss this properly." As matters stood, Wei Xiaodong's desire to deal with the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was even greater than Chung Kitien's. Even though he had managed to evade them for the time being, the other party still had a witness in their hands. To him, this was quite a hidden danger. If this witness were to fall into the hands of the Hong Ing group, he would be in big trouble. It was a pity that although the Hong Merchant Association had quite a bit of influence in the Weyark territorial waters, they were only doing business. This included the guest experts who were stationed here. Their main job was to protect the Hong Merchant Association. Even as the shopkeeper of the branch, Wei Xiaodong could not easily order them around. It was even more impossible for him to make them do things that could not see the light of day. Moreover, Wei Xiaodong himself was too big of a target. Every move he made was watched. If he wanted to do something personally, it would be very difficult. He did not expect Chung Kitien to actually come to him. This young Master Chung had the Poison I'm Mercenary group behind him. They were definitely the local tyrant. If he wanted to do something behind his back, they were the perfect partners. The two of them did not have much of a relationship to begin with. But after this, they actually felt like they were like-minded and regretted not meeting each other earlier. They could not wait to enter the inner hall to discuss in detail. From afternoon to night, they planned for a full 6 hours. Only then did the two of them walk out with smiles on their faces. Wei Xiaodong personally sent them off, and Chung Kitien returned satisfied. In the next few days, Lin Yi originally thought that after the previous incident, whether it was Wei Xiaodong's side or Chung Kitien's side, there should be follow-up actions. However, unexpectedly, these few days were calm and peaceful. There were no signs of anything unusual at all. Since the other party did not come looking for trouble, Lin Yi could not possibly take the initiative to find them by himself. Thus, he was happy to be idle. R655. Chapter 43-51. After all, the gathering of the escort agencies of the South Continent was about to begin, and Chi Wen-han still needed his help. Even if Lin Yi wanted to go on an escort mission, he would not agree to it as the young master. As a result, Lin Yi stayed in the most luxurious guest room in the Equal of Heaven's escort agency. All he had to do every day was wait for Chi Wen-han's people to gather information while he cultivated leisurely. Occasionally, he would think about Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. He wondered how they were doing right now. In the vast ocean, a colossal ship rode through the wind and waves. It moved extremely quickly, but it was as stable as Mount Tai. Standing on it was as stable as land. More importantly, sitting on such a colossal ship was fearless of the wind, waves, and sea beasts. It was truly a leviathan on the ocean. This kind of huge treasure ship had always been the exclusive symbol of the super forces. It was impossible for ordinary sects and forces to have it, and they were not qualified to have it. This kind of strategic existence in the sea was not something that could be bought with a sky-high price of spiritual jades. Even if one had the financial resources to buy it, they would not have any stock to sell to you. The symbol of the Academy of Cultivation was carved on the flagship of the ship. The two words on it were particularly eye-catching: Morningstar. At this moment, two beautiful girls were sitting on the bow of the ship. After the originally fierce sea breeze passed through the protective shield of the huge treasure ship, it became a gentle breeze that blew their long hair. The gentle afterglow of the setting sun shone on them, leaving two beautiful silhouettes on the deck. It seemed real and illusory at the same time, making people feel intoxicated. On the huge ship were all the instructors and disciples of Morningstar Academy, including the 3 pillars of the mountain establishment period, led by Ling Yuanqing. However, for the sake of safety, regular instructors and disciples were strictly restricted. They were not allowed to move around on their own unless there were special circumstances. Apart from a few members of the upper echelon of the academy and the staff who controlled the ship, there were only 2 people who could move about freely on the deck, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. Not only were they direct disciples of the divine nun of the East Sea, but their talent was also extremely shocking. More importantly, their talent was extremely heaven-defying. The entire Morningstar Academy saw them as the future hope. Their master, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, doted on them. Ling Yuanqing, the dean, also doted on them. Compared to other people, they naturally had more privileges. On this treasured ship, the 2 of them could go anywhere they wanted at any time. However, if other disciples or even instructors of the academy dared to wander around when the treasured ship was moving, they wouldn't dare to do so. He would definitely be arrested by the disciplinary squad at any time. At best, he would be confined for 3 years. At worst, he would be expelled from the academy. There was no room for negotiation. So there's so much going on between you and Lin Lil Sis Tao, Xinyan exclaimed as she looked at the beautiful sunset. Her heart was filled with longing. The time she spent with Lin was too short. They were forced to separate not long after they met, so she didn't have time to listen to Lin Yi's experiences on Heaven Stage Island. Over the past few days, whenever she had time, she would ask Huang Xiaotao to tell her about Lin Yi's matters. She had finally finished her story today. Yes, Sister Xianyan, why don't you tell me about Lin Yi's life in the secular world? Huang Xiaodao asked expectantly. Xinyan wanted to know what Lin Yi had experienced on Sky Tier Island, but she wanted to know as well. She wanted to know what Lin Yi had experienced in the secular world. Lin Yi was a mysterious person. The more she knew about him, the more she couldn't see through him. The more she was curious about him, the more she felt that there was an endless story about him. It was fascinating. Okay, the first time I met Lin, he was on a train. Oh, a train is a form of transportation in the secular world. I didn't know him at that time, but he left a deep impression on me. Wang Xinyan said, the corner of her mouth unconsciously curving into a beautiful smile. Now that she recalled the situation, a warm feeling welled up in her heart. It was full of memories. What? Huang Xiaodao couldn't help but ask curiously. Because on the train, there were 3 people who saw that Lin. He was dressed like a country bumpkin, and he looked harmless. They thought that he was easy to trick, so they teamed up and set up a scam. They pretended that Lin, he only had to give them 60,000, and they would give him the prize ring that was worth 80,000. Actually, the prize ring was fake, Wang Xinyan said with a smile. Ah, there are scammers like this in the secular world. If it was someone who likes to take advantage of others, they would really fall for it. But Lin, he isn't that kind of person. He definitely wouldn't pay attention to them, Huang Xiaotao said with a face full of certainty. Huang Xiaodao said with a face of certainty. Even priceless treasures like the infant ginseng and star ink milk wouldn't make Lin lose his mind, let alone this insignificant amount of money from the common world. You guessed wrongly. Lin, he really did agree to it. I even reminded him secretly, but he acted as if he didn't notice and really gave the money to them. Wang Xinyan smiled slightly. Ah, no way. Huang Xiaodao was dumbfounded. It's true. It's just that after Lin, he gave them the money, he took it back from them without anyone noticing. He even took an extra 30,000. Those 3 people were kept in the dark by Lin the whole time. Maybe they still don't understand why they didn't have a single cent left after they got what they wanted, Wang Xinyan said with a smile. She couldn't help but smile every time she thought about it. She'd been worried for Lin at the time, but she didn't know that he was so skilled and daring. He'd been fooling those 3 scammers from the beginning to the end. They deserved to be fooled by Lin. I knew Lin, he wouldn't fall for it. Xinyan sis, your first meeting with Lin, was so fun. Huang Xiaodao laughed so hard that she couldn't stand straight. She was a shy person, But perhaps it was because she shared the same interests as Wang Xinyan, but she was a lot more lively and cheerful when they were alone. Yeah, now that I think about it, it's really unbelievable. Sometimes when fate comes, it can change a person's fate. Wang Xinyan sighed. I was just a normal girl. I never dreamed that I could cultivate, let alone come to Heaven Tier Island. It's like a dream, me too. If I hadn't met Lenny back then, I don't even know what I'd be like right now. I might have died on Mount Hootsai long ago, or I might still be struggling alone, drowning in the pain of my disfigurement. Huang Xiaodao sighed. Both of them had met Lin Yi, and their fates had changed abruptly. From this point of view, the two of them were quite similar. Yin'er Xiaodao. A woman's voice came from behind them. It was the two girls' master, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Chapter 43:52. Master. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao stood up in a hurry and greeted her. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded with a smile. She held the two girls in each hand and felt rather happy inside. The two of them had been together all the time, calling each other sister and sister. They were so close that even she found it rather strange as their master. However, she did not think too much about it. After all, it was good for senior and junior sisters to be close. As their master, she could not ask for more. She felt that it must be because Wang Xinyan was too lonely when she trained with her in the academy. After all, she only had one direct disciple, and she didn't interact with outsiders. She didn't even have someone to talk to, and that was why she was so warm to Huang Xiaodao. The two girls were perfect companions. In a while, the ship will dock at Velvet City. Do you want to go for a walk, or do you want to stay in the inn and cultivate? Asked the divine nun of the East Sea. The reason why she asked this was because the two girls had no interest in going out at all during the previous stop, which was the second stop of the Morningstar Academy, the Devilish Sea Realm. They just stayed in the inn every day and talked about Lenny. The divine nun of the East Sea felt that the two girls were rather quiet. If they did not want to go out, she might as well arrange for a quieter place for them to stay. Velvet City? Master, I want to go for a walk when the time comes. Huang Xiaodao's eyes immediately lit up. Wang Xinyan also rejoiced and nodded. Unlike the Devilish Sea Realm, they should be able to see the Lin Yi they yearned for again if nothing went wrong. Obviously, he would not stay indoors like he did in Devilish Cold City. Huang Xiaodao's intuition told her that Lin Yi must have returned to Weiwan City by now, because he was coming back to hunt down Wu Bao Yang, and more importantly, because he was coming back to find clues about Lu Bianren. Wang Xinyan had also heard about these things from her, and she was filled with anticipation at this moment. Oh, then I'll find two people to protect you. I heard it's rather chaotic here. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded in some surprise. There were many powerful people in the academy. In order to protect her two precious disciples, she could easily find 20 people, let alone two. It's fine. Sure, Fu, we won't be walking around anyway. We're just looking around Velvet City. There are people from the academy everywhere. We won't run into any trouble. Xinyan and Xiaodao said in unison. The two of them wanted to go out for a walk purely to see Lin Yi secretly, and if there was someone following them closely, the two of them would be in trouble. Then how could they secretly date? Then all right, but you have to be careful. If any blind people try to target you, you don't have to worry about anything. The divine nun of the East Sea hesitated before agreeing in the end. After all, just like what the two girls had said, Wayark City would be under martial law, and there would be experts from the Morningstar Academy everywhere. Even if an average person had 100 guts, they would not dare to cause trouble at this time. Besides, his two disciples were not weak, especially Wang Xinyan, who was at the early nascent soul stage. If they really fought, she would be able to defeat opponents who were at a higher level than her. Ordinary people would not be a match for her. Your disciple understands. Thank you, Master. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao immediately beamed with joy. They wrapped their arms around the divine nun of the East Sea as they eagerly awaited Lin Yi's figure in Velvet Arc City. 2 hours later, the huge ship finally docked in Velvet Arc City slowly. The many experts of the Morningstar Academy swarmed out and cordoned off the dock. The people who had gathered there a long time ago did not complain. Instead, they erupted into thunderous cheers. They had waited for a very long time. What's going on outside? Lin, he had just finished cultivating for the day. As soon as he opened the door to his room for a breather, he heard the thunderous cheers outside. He could not help but be stunned. Walking into the courtyard, he could see the bustling scene of people crowding outside through the door. It was exactly the same as what had happened in Rendezvous City. Brotherling, you come out to join the fun too? Chi Wenhan walked over when he saw Lin. Join the fun? Join the fun for what? Lin, he was confused. Recently, he had been living a very simple life. He basically cultivated and consolidated his strength. At most, he would come out to see if the agency had heard anything about Wu Bao Liang and Lu Bianren. He had not taken a single step out of the agency. He was basically cut off from the outside world, so he obviously had no idea what had happened. Brother Ling, you still don't know? The Morning Star Academy of East Continent is here. They've come out to open the disciple selection. They have already stopped at the Zhenduan Sea and the Cold Devil Sea. Our Way Arc Sea is the third stop. Chi Wenhan explained. The Morning Star Academy is here? Lin, he only understood when he heard this. No wonder the scene outside was like this. After he understood, he could not hide the excitement on his face. Didn't that mean that he would be able to see Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao again soon? When they parted ways in Zhenduan City, Linny thought that he would have to wait at least a few years to see the two girls again. He did not expect to see them again after just a month. This was a pleasant surprise. Lin, he had always been calm and collected. Chi Wenhan had never seen him so excited before. Seeing this, he asked curiously, Brother Ling, why are you so excited? Are you preparing to participate in the selection? The East Continent was publicly recognized as the strongest of the 5 islands in heaven rank. Anyone with a bit of ambition would try their best to squeeze their way there, and the Academy selection was the best opportunity. Every time it happened, it would cause a sensation. Chi Wenhan did not find it strange that Lin, he wanted to participate in the selection at all. Even he himself had been there before, but he was not chosen. Now that he had accepted the responsibility of managing the escort agency, he gave up on that thought. He was just here to watch the show. Of course not. I'm a disciple of the 3 pavilions in the north. After I finish my mission, I still have to return to the north. It's just that this is a rare opportunity, so I'm going to watch the show. Linny smiled and shook his head. Just to watch the show? Chi Wenhan let out a sigh of relief. He was actually a little afraid that Lin, he would be chosen by the Morning Star Academy. With his great potential to challenge those of a higher level, it was not impossible. At that time, there would be no one to help him participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Festival. Chi Wenhan paused, then reminded him, You can watch the show, but Brother Ling, you must remember, when the staff of the Academy gives you the sign-up, you must not accept it. Otherwise, you will have to participate in the selection test. Once you pass the test, you will have no choice but to go to the Morning Star Academy. They will not give you any chance to back out. Lin, he couldn't help but be taken aback. Wasn't it common knowledge that you couldn't just pick up a sign-up card? Only an outsider like him didn't know that, and he'd gotten himself into a pit by accident. Chapter 4353. Thinking back to the situation at that time, Lin, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Although there were no flashes of swords, it was the most dangerous and urgent situation he had encountered since coming to the South Continent. However, this outcome was not too bad. Huang Xiaotao had become the disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea and became the disciple that everyone envied. Moreover, she was with Wang Xinyan, so at least she would not be in danger. Just as Lin, he was thinking about how to stay calm and avoid other people's eyes and ears to meet with the 2 women, Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Qiqian had started planning again in the Hong Merchant Association. Shopkeeper Wei, now that the Morning Star Academy is here, the time you mentioned has come. You should tell me the specifics of the plan now. Ling Yi, that little brat, has been hiding in the Equal Heaven Escort Agency for many days now, Cheng Qiqian said impatiently. Previously, when he and Wei Xiaodong had hit it off, he had added oil to the fire and blamed Ling Yi for the failure of the robbery incident. If Ling Yi had not interfered, the robbery plan would have been foolproof, and Qi Wenhan would not have discovered it. Perhaps he had to thank Wei Xiaodong for being magnanimous and not pursuing the equal heaven escort agency's responsibility after receiving the compensation. As such, Wei Xiaodong naturally hated Lin Yi as well. After all, this was the truth. If not for Lin Yi, the pirate leader would not have been captured, and Qi Wenhan would not have known the truth behind the scenes. Letting Wei Xiaodong deal with Ling Yi was what Cheng Qitian meant by killing with a borrowed knife. He knew that Ling Yi had the full protection of the equal heaven escort agency, and he could not do anything by himself. Only by borrowing Wei Xiaodong's power would he have a chance to avenge himself. However, with Wei Xiaodong's deep foresight, how could he be used by an idiot like Cheng Qitian? It would be the other way around, especially with his status. Even if he decided to deal with Lin Yi, he would definitely not do it himself. Cheng Jingtian's little abacus. Wei Xiaodong saw it clearly, but he did not expose it. Firstly, he really hated Ling Yi for ruining his plans and wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. Secondly, he wanted to use this opportunity to get closer to the poison mercenary group. If he wanted to do any shady business in the future, they would be the best partner for him to work with. Young Master Cheng, don't be impatient. The Morningstar Academy is here, but I have yet to see my distant cousin. He is the key person to deal with Ling Yi. Wei Xiaodong said calmly. Distant cousin? Cheng Qitian couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment before asking. Shopkeeper Wei's distant cousin. Could he be someone from the Morningstar Academy? That's right, he's not just a simple disciple in the Morningstar Academy. With his help, just a few words from him would be enough to make Ling Yi suffer a fate worse than death. Wei Xiaodong sneered. So powerful? Shopkeeper Wei, what exactly does your cousin do in the Morningstar Academy? Cheng Qitian was even more curious. Purchasing deacon, Wei Xiaodong said lightly as he personally poured tea for Cheng Jutian. Pooh! Cheng Qitian had just taken a sip when he spurted it out on the spot. He grimaced in pain and said, I thought he was some big shot, but he's just a purchasing deacon. What kind of big shot is he? Young Master Cheng might not know, but don't think that he's just a purchasing deacon. He's in charge of all the purchasing matters of the Morningstar Academy. The amount of power he has isn't something an ordinary person can imagine. Wei Xiaodong said with a profound expression. But even if that's the case, what does a purchasing deacon have to do with dealing with Ling Yi? Cheng Qitian still couldn't understand. Young Master Cheng, don't worry. Although he's a purchasing deacon and has nothing to do with dealing with Ling Yi, he has the authority to speak to the higher-ups of the academy. As long as he says a few words, even if Lin Yi doesn't die, he will. Wei Xiaodong said confidently. Oh, if that's the case, will he help? Cheng Qitian was still a little worried. Distant cousins were usually extremely unreliable. They were often extremely unreliable. When there was nothing going on, they could still befriend each other. However, if they had something to ask of them, they might just turn their backs on them. In this day and age, even blood brothers had to be wary of each other, let alone distant relatives who had nothing to do with each other. Of course, with my relationship with him, this matter is not a problem. Wei Xiaodong was extremely confident. With his experience, of course he wouldn't be so stupid as to rely on such a simple relationship between distant relatives. But this distant relative was different. The two of them were closely connected and had a common interest. Before coming to the South Continent's Wei Arc Territorial Waters to be the branch manager, Wei Xiaodong was the deputy manager of the East Continent's Gaolan Territorial Waters Hong Family Chamber of Commerce. Furthermore, he had been in this position for a whole 5 years. It was also in these 5 years that he gradually drifted apart from Hong Zhong and the rest and gradually walked towards depravity. The key person who led him to depravity was this distant cousin who worked as a purchasing deacon in the Morningstar Academy. One of them was in charge of purchasing, while the other was in charge of selling. After a chance encounter, they immediately discovered the huge benefits hidden within. The Morningstar Academy was such a transcendent force. Just the monthly purchases alone was an absolutely shocking astronomical figure, and the two of them were standing right on top of this astronomical figure. After the two of them got in touch, all of the Morningstar Academy's purchasing requirements fell on the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce. This did not seem inappropriate to outsiders. After all, the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce was a well-known Ding-ranked chamber of commerce, and its reputation was unquestionable. However, what outsiders did not know was that during the monthly purchases, this purchasing deacon would always quote a high price to the Morningstar Academy, while Wei Xiaodong would quote a low price to the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce. The difference between the two of them was so huge that it would definitely make anyone jealous. Not only that, while Wei Xiaodong was stuffing his own pockets, not only was he not suspected by the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce, but because he had solidified the long-term deal with the Morningstar Academy, he was recognized by the higher-ups in the headquarters. After all, this was a bulk purchase. Even if he quoted a low price, the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce would only suffer a reduction in profits and would not suffer any losses. As long as they could make a small profit with a quick turnover, this in itself was a rare contribution. Moreover, if they could take this opportunity to build a good relationship with a transcendent force like the Morningstar Academy, it would actually be of great benefit to the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce. This was something that could not be bought with spiritual jades. On one hand, he was able to obtain a large amount of spiritual jades, and, on the other hand, he was able to make a so-called heroic contribution to the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce. In these 5 years, Wei Xiaodong's days could only be described as a fish in water. He had even fantasized about directly being promoted from the branch's assistant shopkeeper to the branch's shopkeeper position. However, Wei Xiaodong's wish did not come true in the end. He was promoted to the branch's shopkeeper position, but not in the East Continent's Gaolin Sea, but in the South Continent's Wei Arc Sea. To be continued. Chapter 43-54. In order to prevent it from breeding, when one reached the level of a deputy manager with real power, one had to strictly implement the promotion policy. This had always been the iron rule of the Hong Consortium. Even the chairman had no right to violate it. No matter how Wei Xiaodong tried to find the higher-ups, it was of no use. This truly caused Wei Xiaodong to be extremely depressed. Even though his position had risen, he was unable to obtain a large amount of spirit jades from now on. After all, that distant cousin of his couldn't possibly come to the Verdant Arc Sea to purchase resources, right? If he had known that this would happen, he would have stayed in the Gaolin territorial waters and become a lucrative deputy manager. Similarly, his distant cousin who was the purchasing executive also encountered trouble. Ever since Wei Xiaodong was transferred away, he no longer had an insider in the Hong Consortium. After all, the branch manager couldn't be like Wei Xiaodong, who could quote a high price for him while receiving a low price that was greatly discounted. The Hong Consortium had always been open and above board in doing business with strict supervision. They would never engage in such shady business of falsely reporting prices. Only people like Wei Xiaodong, who were blinded by greed, would take the risk and do things sneakily. However, although the Hong Consortium couldn't continue to earn from the price difference, the purchasing executive could at least change to another consortium and find someone else to work with to continue filling his own pockets. However, it had nothing to do with Wei Xiaodong anymore. From the Gaolin territorial waters of the East Continent to the Wei Arc territorial waters of the South Continent, Wei Xiaodong suddenly felt a huge difference. If he hadn't experienced the days of earning a lot of benefits, it would have been fine. However, the problem was that this kind of thing was addictive. When a person got used to doing things unscrupulously, he would no longer be able to do so openly. Even if the salary of a branch manager was already very impressive to ordinary people, it was simply a drop in the bucket in the eyes of Wei Xiaodong, who was used to filling his own pockets. However, he didn't dare to openly make a move on the internal accounts of the Hong Consortium. Not to mention that the foundation he had established in the Wei Arc territorial waters was far from being able to cover the sky with one hand. Just the strict supervision of the Hong Ing group made him not dare to make a move easily. At most, he could only take a roundabout way and take some benefits for himself. However, this ultimately couldn't satisfy his greed. In the end, he found another way to make use of the chaotic conditions in the South Continent's territorial waters to start a pirate business. Of course, it was impossible for Wei Xiaodong to become a pirate. For the sake of safety, he did not dare to keep pirates in private. Every time, he would only act as a mastermind behind the scenes, secretly contacting the pirates and taking back the goods himself. At the same time, he would demand huge compensation from the escort agency. Over the years, Wei Xiaodong had defrauded many escort agencies and clients. However, because he was extremely careful and secretive. Moreover, most of the escort agencies would try their best to minimize the problem in order to protect their reputation once they lost their goods. No one would take the initiative to compensate him and settle the matter in private. No one would make a big fuss and take the initiative to leak such a scandal to outsiders. Therefore, Wei Xiaodong had always been able to sit back and relax. Outsiders had no idea what he had done. They wouldn't even suspect him, except this time. Unfortunately, it was all because of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Wei Xiaodong never would have thought that the goods that he had obtained would be snatched back by Lin Yi. Moreover, he never would have thought that Shi Wenhan would be so convinced that he would bring people to look for him, causing a huge uproar in the city. In this way, even if Wei Xiaodong managed to get away with it this time, he would not dare to use the same trick to defraud others. Otherwise, no matter how slow the other party's brain was, they would still be able to come around and become suspicious. Furthermore, the escort agencies and clients that he had defrauded in the past, after seeing what had happened to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, might even come to their senses and look for Wei Xiaodong to settle the score. Not only had he cut off his source of income, but he had also brought such a huge hidden danger to him. The main culprit of all this was that fellow called Ling Yi. If Wei Xiaodong let him off, he would not be called Wei Xiaodong. Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Ketian waited until the evening. When the people from the Morning Star Academy had checked into the inn, they could not wait any longer and went to visit his distant cousin, Qin Deli. The Morning Star Academy was high up in the sky. Even if Wei Xiaodong was the shopkeeper of the Hong Merchant Association, he could only wait outside the entrance of the inn after notifying Qin Deli. "Brother Wei, you've come at the right time. I was just about to go out and look for you." Qin Deli was extremely tall and sturdy. He looked like a crude and boorish man. Moreover, his actions were forthright and generous. It was hard to imagine that this person was actually the same as Wei Xiaodong, a businessman through and through, and a black-hearted one at that. "Cousin is looking for me?" Wei Xiaodong was slightly stunned. "Yes, I have something to do. Let's go to your place. It'll be more convenient to talk." Qin Deli nodded. "All right, cousin, please." Wei Xiaodong immediately got someone to prepare a carriage and returned to the Hong Merchant Association. On the way, he introduced to Qin Deli, "Cousin, this is the young master of the Poison I'm Mercenary Group, young master Cheng Ketian." "Greetings, Senior Qin." Cheng Ketian did not dare to be negligent, and hurriedly cupped his hands in greeting. Qin Deli nodded slightly, but did not say anything. As the purchasing deacon of the Morning Star Academy, he had his eyes on the top of his head. Not to mention a mere Cheng Ketian, even the entire Poison Eye Mercenary Group was just a country bumpkin who had never seen the world. He did not put them in his eyes at all. Cheng Ketian had never received such cold treatment before, and was immediately filled with anger. However, he was not stupid enough to challenge such a person. After all, he was still counting on the other party to deal with Ling Yi, so he could only swallow his anger. The three of them arrived at the Hong Merchant Association and stepped into the inner hall. Not only did Qin Deli dismiss the servants, even Cheng Ketian, who wanted to follow them, was dismissed. Only then did he open his mouth and say, "Brother Wei, business is here. This time, we will stop at Weiwan City, and all our supplies will be replenished here. So you know the old rules." "All right." Wei Xiaodong was instantly overjoyed. Ever since he was transferred out, he had not had this kind of good business for a long time. Although it was only this time, he could still earn a lot from it. Remember, do it cleanly. The partner I found in the East Continent is not reliable, and it seems like the higher-ups have already noticed something. Don't let them get hold of you. Qin Deli sternly warned. "Cousin, Don't tell me you're still worried about me handling things? Wei Xiaodong confidently patted his chest. Of course I'm worried about you handling things. Otherwise, why would I look for you? Qin Deli smiled. Previously, when Wei Xiaodong was in the Gaolin Sea, it was also the time when he had earned the most. Their cooperation was rather pleasant, but it was a pity that things did not go as he wished. Chapter 43:55. Thank you, cousin, for your care. Wei Xiaodong's heart skipped a beat and immediately said, Cousin, there's something I need your help with. Oh, tell me about it. But like I said, someone wants to investigate me. There are some things I can't help with. Qin Deli glanced at him. At that time, because of Wei Xiaodong, he had gained a lot of benefits. If it wasn't a difficult matter, he wouldn't mind helping him out. Of course, if it was a difficult matter, then it would be a different story. Cousin, don't worry, I'm just passing on message. I won't make things difficult for you. Wei Xiaodong hurriedly said. Passing on a message? What message? Qin Deli asked curiously. Cousin, the Morningstar Academy is holding a selection. If you find a rare genius, can you recommend him to the higher-ups of the academy? Wei Xiaodong said with deep meaning. Of course, as long as it's a genius, not just me. Any disciple of the academy has the right to recommend him. Qin Deli nodded his head and looked suspiciously at Wei Xiaodong. Brother Wei, don't tell me you've received a bribe and want me to recommend that Chang Qitian? One look and you can tell that he's trash. Even if I recommend him, it'll be useless. The higher-ups can tell that there's something fishy going on. No. It's not him. I want you to recommend someone else. He's an escort from the local Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. His name is Ling Yi. Wei Xiaodong shook his head. How powerful can a mere escort be? You still need me to help you recommend him? Qin Deli asked curiously. He's an early golden core stage expert, and he can kill an original infant stage expert. Cousin, don't you think he's powerful? Wei Xiaodong said with a profound expression. How is that possible? Brother Wei, you must be joking. How can there be such an expert in the world? Even Qin Deli was shocked. Then, his eyes lit up as he said, Don't lie to me. If you're talking about this Ling Yi, he's really a genius. If I recommend him, it'll be a great achievement. Cousin, what I'm saying isn't false. One of young Master Cheng's servants outside was a peak early-stage nascent soul cultivator. In the end, he was crippled by this person. This is something that many people have seen with their own eyes. Just go to the dock and ask, and you will know, Wei Xiaodong said as he sipped his tea. When he first heard about this, he was really shocked. A mere expert in the early gold core stage was able to cripple someone at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. Anyone with a little common sense would find this kind of thing unbelievable. But it was also because of this. Only then would Wei Xiaodong comply with Cheng Qitian's wishes. Compared to Qi Wenhan and the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Wei Xiaodong would prioritize getting rid of this Ling Yi. After all, this kind of genius expert's growth potential was limitless. If he couldn't get rid of him before he became even stronger, then it would be too late to deal with him at that time. Is that true? As long as his spirit root wasn't too bad, it would be a sure thing for him to enter the academy. Brother Wei, quickly call this person over and let me see him. Qin Deli immediately said somewhat impatiently. This kind of genius only needed to be introduced to the higher-ups of the academy. With just the effort of opening his mouth, he could easily obtain a great merit. For him, who was already in a bad situation, this was a timely reign. Even if it was because of his merit, ordinary people wouldn't dare to have any ideas about him at this time. Cousin wants to see him? This is a bit difficult. Wei Xiaodong shook his head. What? You wanted to introduce him, but you won't let me see him. Could it be that you want to be a rare commodity for yourself? Qin Deli's face immediately darkened. Hey, cousin, what are you thinking about? Am I that kind of person? Wei Xiaodong waved his hand repeatedly. With a bitter smile, he said, It's not that I don't want you to see him, but this Ling Yi is my enemy. Enemy? Qin Deli was instantly stunned. With a strange expression, he looked at Wei Xiaodong up and down and said inexplicably, I say, Brother Wei, Have you been kicked in the head by a donkey? You want me to help you introduce an enemy? If this guy is really as heaven-defying as you say, aren't you afraid that after he enters the academy, his wings will harden and he will turn around and attack you? I'm afraid, of course I'm afraid. Even if this kind of person doesn't enter the Morning Star Academy, if I don't get rid of him as soon as possible, I won't be able to sleep well. Wei Xiaodong laughed coldly. That's why I came up with this plan. I want Cousin to help me, to invite him into the trap. How do you invite him into the trap? Brother Wei, what are you thinking? Tell me in detail. Qin Deli was instantly interested. All right, Cousin, think about it. No matter who it is, if there's a chance to enter the Morning Star Academy, I'm sure they wouldn't reject it, right? Wei Xiaodong changed the topic and asked, That's natural. How many geniuses have broken their heads trying to get in, but were rejected at the door? Who would reject this kind of opportunity? Qin Deli nodded and said, That's right. That Ling Yi definitely wouldn't reject it. However, outsiders think of the Morning Star Academy as a holy land for cultivation. Not many people know that it's actually filled with danger, right? Wei Xiaodong had stayed in the East Continent's Gaolin Sea for a whole 5 years, and he often went to the Morning Star Academy. He was very clear about the situation inside. That's right. Many of the newly accepted genius disciples have never thought that it's so dangerous inside. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people dying in their first year. Qin Deli nodded and said, So, as long as we send Ling Yi into the Morning Star Academy, it's actually equivalent to sending him into the tiger's mouth. At that time, Cousin, you can spend some effort to secretly sow discord and let those tigers set their eyes on Ling Yi, this tender sheep. What will the result be? Wei Xiaodong smiled proudly. Of course he'll be ganged up on and die without a burial. Hearing this, Qin Deli finally understood. He patted Wei Xiaodong's shoulder and laughed. Ha! Brother Wei, you really are a profiteer. You can even think of such a murderous plan. Furthermore, with the reputation of the Morning Star Academy there, even if they knew it was a trap, normal people would not be able to resist the temptation and jump in. That Ling, you must have had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to provoke you. There's no other way. This hidden danger is too big. If I don't get rid of him, I won't be able to sleep. Wei Xiaodong smiled proudly, and then said seriously, I'll leave this matter to you, Cousin. No problem. Not only will I be able to help you, but I'll also be able to get credit for it. This is killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Qin Deli laughed heartily. After the two of them finished discussing, Qin Deli was a little impatient. He immediately returned to the inn where the Morning Star Academy was stationed and solemnly requested to see the dean, Ling Yuanqing. Chapter 4356. After hearing Qin Deli's report, even Ling Yuanqing was a little shocked. Of course, he invited the other 2 mountain opening stage giants over to discuss this matter together. A while later, the vice-headmaster Wei Hebei arrived first, followed closely by the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. However, there were 2 people behind her, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. Whether it was Ling Yuanqing or Wei Hebei, neither of them found this strange at all when they saw the 2 girls enter as well. No matter where the divine nun of the East Sea went, she would always bring her 2 direct disciples with her. This was actually very normal. After all, she was not like Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei. She only had these 2 disciples. Moreover, their aptitudes and potential were all treasures of the academy, so it was normal for her to dote on them. As long as it wasn't a core secret, it wouldn't affect her to bring the 2 girls along, and it would also allow them to broaden their horizons. However, it was impossible for Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei to be like this. As men, they wouldn't be so meticulous in their considerations. The key was that they had too many disciples. Even personal disciples numbered more than 2 or 3. If they had to guide them at any time, they wouldn't be able to do anything else. After gesturing for everyone to take their seats, Ling Yuanqing said to Qin Deli, Tell everyone what happened just now. Yes. Qin Deli glanced at Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao out of the corner of his eye, gulping. Headmasters, I've just learned that there's a local in Velvet Arc City called Ling Yi. He's very strong, able to kill a peak early-stage nascent soul practitioner with his early-stage golden core strength. What? Wei Hebei and the divine nun of the East Sea were both surprised. They asked in unison, "Is that true?" The Morningstar Academy was a place where geniuses gathered. Many of the disciples that walked out of the academy had the strength to challenge those of a higher cultivation level. This was not strange, but if this was to challenge someone of a higher cultivation level, then it was extremely rare. Even so, everyone knew that the so-called cross-realm battle was generally a peak late Jit-on stage or a peak Jit-on stage master who fought against an early Yuanying stage master. After all, every realm was a qualitative change. Even if it was between the golden core perfection and the nascent soul realm, the difference was like a chasm. It was not something that a genius could challenge. Even in the Morningstar Academy, where geniuses gathered, there were only a few disciples who could reach this level. They were also as rare as phoenix feathers or unicorn horns. As for a mere master in the early stage of the gold core realm, being able to challenge a master in the nascent soul realm, and it was a master in the peak of the early stage of the nascent soul realm. This kind of thing was simply a fantasy. Even Ling Yuanqing, the three giants in the mountain opening stage, had never heard of it. The mountain opening stage giants were shocked, but Huang Xiaodao and Wang Xinyan were even more shocked. This was because the Ling Yi that this person was talking about was the Lin Yi that the two of them had been thinking about day and night. The two women couldn't help but have strange expressions. They were still thinking about how to secretly meet up with Lin Yi. In the end, someone actually came to recommend Lin Yi first. He was really caught unprepared. It's absolutely true. At that time, this Ling Yi was at the dock, and he crippled a peak early nascent soul stage expert. This incident was seen by many people. Our Morningstar Academy has always been thirsty for talent. So this disciple thinks that a genius like this shouldn't be buried and should be recruited into the academy as soon as possible, Qin Deli said politely. The three mountain opening stage giants looked at each other, and finally, Dean Ling Yuanqing opened his mouth and said, "We really can't miss such a genius. With his powerful strength and methods, even if his spirit roots attribute is ordinary, as long as we create a false attribute for him, he will be a rare good seedling." What do you two think? That's right. The attribute of the spiritual root isn't everything. Some people have a bad spiritual root, but their potential is actually astonishing. Their future is limitless as well. This Ling, he must be one of them. Wei Hebei's eyes shone brightly. He immediately became rather tempted. Out of the three mountain opening stage giants, he was the most passionate about accepting disciples. Basically, as long as it was a rather impressive genius, he would want to recruit them. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded in agreement, but she said nothing. No matter how much of a genius he was, she only accepted female disciples. This was the rule of the East Sea lineage. She would never go against it. So, she was not as excited as Wei Hebei. Since the two of you agree, do you think we should make an exception and accept him? Although it's possible for this person to participate in the selection, there's still the possibility of him being left out, suggested Ling Yuanqing. Making an exception to recruit a genius was something that didn't conform to the selection rules. Originally, it was strictly forbidden. However, rules were dead and people were alive. In front of a truly heaven-defying genius, all so-called rules could give way. However, this required the unanimous agreement of the three giants. I think that's how it should be. Special geniuses obviously need special treatment. Right now, the competition for genius disciples in the various academies has already heated up. Our Morningstar Academy can't fall behind. For a heaven-defying genius like him, it's not going to be too much even if we put down our pride and personally invite him. An expert in the early stage of the Gold Core realm was not worth mentioning, but this was an expert in the early stage of the Gold Core realm who could kill an expert at the peak of the early stage of the nascent soul realm. That was completely different. If he could take such a genius under his command, that scene would be wonderful. I have no objections, said the divine nun of the East Sea with a nod. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded as well. Although it was impossible for her to accept this disciple herself, she would be happy to see the Academy gain another supreme genius. All right then. Since the two of you agree, then it's settled. Ling Yuanqing immediately made up his mind. Afterwards, he asked, "Who's willing to lead the group?" Even if such a heaven-defying genius was accepted into the Academy, regular instructors definitely would not have the right to teach him. He would only be able to become a disciple of the three mountain opening giants. Whoever led the group this time would basically decide who Ling Yuanqing would become a disciple of. The divine nun of the East Sea looked at the two of them calmly. She did not say anything. As the headmaster, even if Ling Yuanqing was slightly tempted, he could not be so impatient as to set off personally. They still had to be courteous to each other. "Why don't I go?" Wei Hebei said rather eagerly. He was a straightforward person. Once he took a liking to someone, he would not care about the details. Ling Yuanqing sank into his thoughts for a while. He was rather hesitant. To be honest, he was rather tempted as well. This was already the third stop in the Sea of Vernarks. The divine nun of the East Sea had accepted the astonishingly talented Huang Xiaodao from the previous two stops. Although Wei Hebei had not accepted such a genius with limitless potential, he had still accepted two honorary disciples. He was the only one who had gained nothing. Chapter 4357. Now that they had finally found a genius, if they continued to be courteous like before and missed this opportunity, they would inevitably regret it. However, they had not even seen the person and had only heard Qin Deli's side of the story. If they were to fight with Wei Hebei over this disciple, it would be a little unreasonable. Deans, according to what I know, Ling Yi is still at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and has no plans to participate in the Academy selection. If only one of the deans were to lead the team, it would seem that our Academy is lacking in sincerity. However, if all three deans would go together, then Ling Yi would not be able to refuse. Qin Deli suddenly interrupted. The reason for this suggestion was to ensure that Ling Yi would be able to enter the Morning Star Academy. On the other hand, if Ling Yi did not know how to appreciate kindness and refused, then it would be even better. At that time, the three heavyweights would definitely lose face, and if they were to lose face, then Ling Yi would definitely be the one to suffer. After all, the three of them represented the entire Morning Star Academy. If it did not give them face, then they would not give the Morning Star Academy any face. If this matter were to spread, the reputation of the Academy would definitely be affected. Whether it was for public or private reasons, they could not just let Ling go like this. They might even flip out on the spot. Your words are not without reason. Ling Yuanqing nodded his head. He did not know what Qin Deli's intentions were, but these words were a good way for him to get out of this predicament. Not only did he not have to throw away his face to fight with Wei Hebei, but he could also personally see this so-called super genius killing two birds with one stone. I think it's fine. Wei Hebei did not think too much and immediately nodded his head in agreement. As for the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, he had no objections. It was just a trip. After the three heavyweights made their decision, they did not care that the sky was already dark. They immediately let Qin Deli lead the way, and the group set off for the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Qin Deli naturally accepted the order. Along the way, he also secretly sent someone to inform Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Jutian. He told them to go to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to watch the show. Young master, someone is coming." Seeing the group, the guard of the escort agency hurriedly informed Qi Wenhan. "Who is it? Why are you so flustered? What a disgrace." Qi Wenhan was discussing business with a client. He couldn't help but frown and reprimand her. It's the headmaster of the Morning Star Academy. One of the three heavyweights," the guard stammered. "What?" This time, even Qi Wenhan's face was full of shock. He stood rooted to the ground, unable to move. After a long while, he finally reacted. He didn't even care about the customers beside him and hurriedly ran towards the door. Morning Star Academy's mountain opening period's three great heads, any one of them placed in the verdant Arc territorial waters, would definitely be a super god. Even the leaders of the top forces here didn't have the qualifications to request an audience with them, let alone have them pay a personal visit. What day was it today? The three leaders of the mountain opening period had come together to visit a small heavens equal escort agency. Could it be that something had happened? Arriving at the entrance of the escort agency, Qi Wenhan saw the people who had come. Although Ling Yuanqing and the other two had restrained their auras to be no different from ordinary people, it was difficult to hide the extraordinary temperament of a grandmaster. Even if Qi Wenhan had never seen these three giants before, he could still recognize them at a glance. Among the crowd, Qi Wenhan also noticed the figures of Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Shutian, his two sworn enemies. His eyelids immediately twitched. His intuition told him that today's incident might be related to these two people. I am the young master of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan. Please forgive me for not coming out to greet you. Suppressing his various doubts, Qi Wenhan greeted the three giants politely. Forgive us for our intrusion. We've troubled the young master. Ling Yuanqing nodded indifferently. Not at all, not at all. The three of you are esteemed guests of our entire Verdant Arc territorial waters. To be able to visit our Heavens Equal Escort Agency is a blessing that we won't be able to obtain even in several lifetimes. Please come in. Qi Wenhan smiled apologetically in a flattering manner as he made people make arrangements in a hurry, inviting everyone into the reception room of the escort agency. Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Shutian mixed in with the crowd as they tailed the three giants. The corner of Qi Wenhan's eye twitched, but he could not chase them away in front of the three giants, so he could only turn a blind eye to it. Once everyone had entered the reception room and invited the three giants to sit down, Qi Wenhan's eyelid suddenly twitched again. Only now did he notice Huang Xiaotao beside the divine nun of the East Sea. He could not help but feel surprised and doubtful. However, because Huang Xiaotao had always been veiled, he was unable to confirm that they were the same person. He could only suppress his doubts. Actually, Cheng Shutian had seen Huang Xiaotao before out of everyone present. He had the same doubts as Qi Wenhan, but he did not think too much about it. These days, many female cultivators would wear veils to avoid trouble when they went out. It was very likely that it was just a coincidence. Young master, you don't come without a reason. We've come this time to see an escort from your esteemed agency. His name is Ling Yi. Ling Yuanqing cut to the chase. Ling Yi. Qi Wenhan was taken aback again. He glanced at Huang Xiaodao subconsciously before asking carefully, "May I ask why you're looking for Ling Yi Sr.? I heard that Ling Yi's strength is startling, and he can challenge those at higher cultivation levels, so we've come to see him. If he's willing, we plan on taking him on as a disciple," Ling Yuanqing said straightforwardly. He's actually here to take on a disciple? Qi Wenhan immediately became even more puzzled. Ling Yi's strength was indeed ridiculously powerful. He could even cripple a peak early nascent soul cultivator like Old Kong, but there were not many people who knew about him so far. It was impossible for his name to have spread far and wide enough to alarm the three great pillars of the mountain establishment realm, right? Seeing Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Shutian's complacent and playful expressions, Qi Wenhan was even more certain now. It was definitely the two of them who were behind this. However, even though he knew this, Qi Wenhan did not dare to decline. After all, Ling Yuanqing had personally spoken. Let alone him, no one in the Verdant Arc territory would dare to say no. Yes, please wait a moment, seniors. I'll send someone to invite Ling Yi over right now. Qi Wenhan nodded and shot a glance at Caretaker Song beside him. A while later, under the guidance of Caretaker Song, Lin Yi strode into the guest room. Ling Yuanqing, Wei Hebei, and the divine nun of the East Sea all looked at him at the same time. They all looked at one another rather strangely. Although they could not recall the exact details, the perception of the great pillars of the mountain establishment realm was not just for show. Even if they had only caught a glimpse of him at the crowded selection, they would still have an impression of him. Now that they saw Lin Yi again, they could not help but find him rather familiar. Chapter 4358. As for Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, when they saw Lin Yi again, their eyes became extremely passionate. If there weren't so many people watching, the two of them would have already flown into Lin Yi's arms. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it now. They couldn't even speak and could only stand at the side and watch. As for Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Qiqian, they were laughing coldly and complacently without end at this moment. As far as they were concerned, since the matter had developed to this point, Lin Yi had no room to refuse at all, and he could only obediently jump into the trap they dug for him. Otherwise, if he dared make the three heads lose face in public, then he would immediately die a miserable death. Lin Yi glanced at the crowd in surprise. Before he could speak, Qin Deli had already taken a step forward and announced in front of everyone, "Ling Yi, because you can challenge nascent soul stage experts and have amazing potential, you have received the appreciation of the three deans of our Morningstar Academy. We have decided to make an exception and accept you as a disciple. From today onwards, you will join our Morningstar Academy. This is a rare opportunity given by the heavens. You must grasp it well." Lin Yi was even more stunned after hearing this. After glancing at the three magnates, he looked at Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. Seeing that the two of them shook their heads without batting an eyelid, he immediately knew that this wasn't their idea. But if it wasn't Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao, but someone else, why would they inexplicably recommend him to the three magnates of the mountain opening period? What was their intention? How sharp was Lin Yi? He immediately caught the slight exchange of glances between Qin Deli, Wei Xiaodong, and Cheng Qiqian. As expected, those who were unaccountably solicitous were hiding evil intentions. Since this person was in cahoots with Wei Xiaodong, it definitely wasn't a good thing. Who knew? There might be some conspiracy waiting for him behind the scenes. This kind of thing, Lin Yi naturally couldn't agree. If he really had this intention, he wouldn't have been put in a difficult position in Jinduan City. Why would he wait until now? 3 seniors. My aptitude is poor. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint the 3 seniors. Lin Yi immediately cupped his hands and rejected. Poor aptitude? This young hero Ling is too humble, isn't he? The matter of you crippling a peak early nascent soul realm expert at the docks is something that everyone can see. Now that the 3 of us academy heads have personally come to invite you, you're still purposely avoiding us like this. Isn't this a little unreasonable? Don't tell me you don't put our Morningstar Academy in your eyes? Qin Deli immediately seized the opportunity to provoke. Ling Yuanqing and the other 2 also frowned slightly. No matter what, this Ling Yi's rejection was too hasty and straightforward. He didn't even consider the most basic of things. It was indeed a little embarrassing. The expressions of the 3 heavyweights turned cold, and the atmosphere in the hall suddenly became tense and oppressive. Even Shi Wenhan was sweating on behalf of Lin Yi. This was different from Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Qiqian. If he really offended the big shots of the Morningstar Academy, his small heavens equal escort agency would not be able to protect Lin Yi. Everyone's gazes fell on him, but Lin Yi smiled faintly, not minding it. He pointed at Huang Xiaodao, who stood beside the divine nun of the East Sea, and replied calmly, "Don't tell me you've all forgotten. Back in Jinduan City, Junior Huang and I participated in the selection together. However, my aptitude was just too poor, so I was eliminated in the first round. Ling Yuanqing and the others already had a slight impression of him. Now that Lin Yi mentioned it, they immediately came to a realization. So it was him. If it were only Lin Yi, the 3 heavyweights of the mountain establishment period might not have paid attention to him. But back then, when they were stunned by Huang Xiaotao's exceptional aptitude, Huang Xiaotao had specially discussed it with her senior brother, so they obviously paid attention to him. Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. For what he remembered, Ling Yi's spiritual root only had a single attribute of fire, so he was directly eliminated. Furthermore, he didn't have any outstanding performance during the selection. If he was really that powerful and could fight against an opponent of a higher realm, he would definitely have mentioned it on the spot and participated in the formation attack test. After all, The selection rules of the Morningstar Academy clearly stated that if he really had the strength to take on opponents of higher cultivation levels, he would still have a chance of entering the academy as long as he performed outstandingly in the formation attack test, even if his spiritual root was average. Ling Yuanqing remembered very clearly that he had not requested to participate back then. Ling Yuanqing did not feel like he was hiding anything at such an important event. Logically speaking, since he had come to participate in the selection, he definitely hoped to enter the academy. Moreover, he was with Huang Xiaotao, so he definitely did not want to be separated from her. If he could enter the academy, why would he have given up in the first place? What's going on? Ling Yuanqing turned his head to look at Qin Deli with a look of reproach in his eyes. The three heavyweights of the mountain establishment period had come here full of hope, but this was the result. This was too disappointing. Qin Deli immediately panicked. Originally, it was an impeccable situation, but he never thought that with just a few simple words, it would suddenly turn out like this. The Dean Ling Yuanqing's reproach was not something a small purchasing deacon like him could bear. Qin Deli was speechless and could only turn his head to look at Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Jutian. His eyes were filled with anger and reproach. He originally thought that it would be a good thing to kill two birds with one stone, but he did not expect it to turn out like this. This time, he was really screwed over by these two fellows. Wei Xiaodong was also dumbfounded. He only wanted to deal with Lin Yi after listening to Cheng Jutian's words. He did not understand it at all, and it was even more impossible for him to know that there was such an inside story. For a moment, he was also at a loss. He pushed Cheng Jutian, who was beside him. This was his fault, so of course he had to clean it up. Impossible. When this fellow first came to the Wei Arc City, he clearly injured our poison mercenary group's Old Kong with the strength of the early Golden Core stage. He is a peak early nascent soul stage expert. Cheng Jutian was also anxious and quickly jumped out to say. When Ling Yuanqing and the others heard this, their gazes then fell onto Lin Yi. They couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. Although they did not know Cheng Jutian, at least they could be sure that this person would not dare to lie in front of the three heavyweights of the mountain establishment period. Moreover, this kind of thing could definitely be found with other witnesses. In other words, this Ling Yi really had some reservations? For a moment, everyone's gazes were a little more scrutinizing. If this was really the case, then what Ling Yi's intentions were a little bit interesting. What he said is right. Lin Yi did not deny it, but immediately said, "It's just that at that time, I was working together with Junior Huang. With Junior Huang's heaven-defying talent, it is not strange for us to work together to defeat a peak early nascent soul stage expert." Chapter 4359. And that makes sense. Ling Yuanqing and the other two mountain opening stage masters nodded their heads. They felt that there was nothing wrong with Lin Yi's answer. Huang Xiaodao was a super genius with dual fire and wind spiritual roots. She was also a golden core stage master who had a perfect breakthrough. Her strength was far from that of an ordinary golden core stage master. When the two of them joined forces, they were able to defeat a peak early nascent soul stage master. Although it seemed unbelievable to others, it was actually reasonable when they thought about it carefully. Impossible. Cheng Jutian hurriedly said, "The first time, you two joined forces. But the second time, not long ago, you crippled Old Kong alone. How do you explain this?" "It's very simple. He was previously injured by me and Junior Huang. His injuries have not healed yet." Lin Yi smiled calmly and shrugged his shoulders. "And when I was in the Zhanduan Sea, I accidentally obtained 2 golden cores. After consuming them, I leveled up. Moreover, it was unexpected. Is it strange that Old Kong was crippled by me?" Everyone nodded their heads again. Because they knew Huang Xiaotao's heaven-defying talent, they also knew that Lin Yi's aptitude was mediocre. Therefore, they first thought that it was mainly because of Huang Xiaotao that he could injure a peak early nascent soul stage master like Old Kong. He was just there to make up the numbers. Even the second time they fought alone, it was definitely because Huang Xiaotao's injuries were too severe. After all, With Huang Xiaodao's super aptitude, it was not strange for her to defeat an opponent of a higher level. Moreover, Ling Yi himself said that the second time they fought, it was unexpected. It meant that the opponent must have underestimated him. With so many prerequisites, it resulted in the so-called early golden core stage killing a peak early nascent soul stage master. After analyzing all of this, it could only be said that Ling Yi was lucky, but it did not mean that he was really that heaven-defying. What my senior brother said is true. I can testify to this. At this time, Huang Xiaodao took the opportunity to stand out. Although she wanted to be with Lin Yi, since Lin Yi did not want to join the Morningstar Academy, she naturally had to find a way to help him. Naturally, she had to find a way to help Lin Yi escape successfully. As a direct disciple who was highly valued, Huang Xiaodao's words were clearly more trustworthy than a random passerby like Cheng Qitian. Not only did the divine nun of the East Sea trust her disciple completely, but Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei did not doubt her at all. Huang Xiaodao's words were basically the final conclusion to today's events. No, impossible. Absolutely impossible. Originally, he was about to succeed, but in the end, everything was suddenly destroyed. Cheng Qitian was simply furious. He angrily pointed at Huang Xiaodao and said, "With this little bitch's strength, how could she possibly injure old Kong? Back then, when I wanted to capture her, she hid behind Ling Yi and trembled. She simply..." Before Cheng Qitian had even finished speaking, the atmosphere suddenly dropped to a freezing point. Everyone subconsciously held their breaths. The divine nun of the East Sea's icy cold voice rang out. "Who are you calling a little bitch? Who do you want to capture?" Only then did Cheng Qitian realize what he had just said. Immediately, cold sweat poured down from his head. He wanted to remedy the situation in a hurry, but it was already too late. The divine nun of the East Sea was a mighty figure of the mountain establishment realm, and she had always been very protective of her own. Why would she give an ant like him the chance to remedy the situation? Cheng Qitian was unable to say anything at all. He had only managed to utter a single word when he felt an icy cold, powerful pressure sweep over, blanketing the surroundings. It was like a lofty mountain that suddenly pressed down on top of his head, causing him to be utterly unable to catch his breath. The surroundings fell deathly silent. All that was left was Cheng Qitian's heavy breathing. The blood on his face surged, and his eyes exploded with viciousness. A while later, he suddenly vomited a great mouthful of blood and collapsed on the ground, dead. Wei Xiaodong immediately pissed his pants in fright when he saw Cheng Qitian's miserable death. Before anyone had noticed him, he retreated to a corner in a hurry, afraid to make a sound. Qin Deli was also frightened out of his wits as he cursed inside. He was tempted to grab Wei Xiaodong and give him 14,000 slaps. What kind of fucking idiot teammate did he find? It's fine if you're looking to die, but now I'm stuck in a tight spot as well. What am I supposed to do? It was not just the two of them who felt guilty. Even Lin Yi felt rather frightened when he saw this. Giants of the mountain establishment realm really were godlike existences. In the past, he had heard from that ghost that some powerful existences did not even need to do anything. They could kill you with a single glance. Lin Yi had thought that was a little exaggerated, but the sight before him had truly verified it. No matter how useless this Cheng Qitian was, he was still a genuine late-stage golden elixir realm expert. He didn't even move a finger, yet he was casually tortured to death. The strength of an opening mountain stage giant was indeed beyond imagination. Out of everyone present, only Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei remained unmoved. They did not care at all. An ant-like existence actually dared to call the direct disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea a little bitch. Wasn't that just looking to die? The divine nun of the East Sea had always advocated purity, but her personal style was actually the classic example of using violence to curb violence. She was rather like the furious Buddha, especially when it involved her treasured disciple. Let alone killing a single person, it would already be very merciful if she did not destroy your entire family. Thank you for standing up for me, Master. Huang Xiaodao grabbed the divine nun of the East Sea's arm gratefully under Wang Xinyan's gesture. Xiaodao, remember this. No matter who it is that dares to harm you, feel free to tell me. I don't like killing people, but I don't mind killing people either. The divine nun of the East Sea patted Huang Xiaotao's hand gently before glancing at the corpse on the ground. She said indifferently, "Clean it up. Don't ruin everyone's mood." Yes, yes. Qi Wenhan was taken aback before nodding in a hurry. He got people to drag Cheng Kitian's corpse out like a dead dog. At the same time, he secretly rejoiced inside. Cheng Kitian had been his sworn enemy for many years. He had always been looking for trouble with him. However, Qi Wenhan had never dared to actually kill him because he was worried about the poison mercenaries. He never thought he would receive such a pleasant surprise today. Cheng Kitian had died to the divine nun of the East Sea. Let alone avenging his son, his father, Cheng Haonan, would probably piss his pants in fright. He was afraid that she would destroy the entire poison mercenaries if she was displeased. The poison mercenaries had always been strutting around the Vernark Sea, but they only did whatever they wanted. Before a mountain establishment giant like the divine nun of the East Sea, resistance was nothing. Their life and death were completely up to her. Speak. What happened exactly? Ling Yuanqing turned to Qin Deli again. Chapter 4360. Although this Lord Dean didn't have the intention to kill, Cheng Kitian's mistake was placed in front of him, and Qin Deli was almost scared to the point of collapsing. He looked at Wei Xiaodong, who was hiding in the corner, and stammered, I heard this from shopkeeper Wei, so I came to report it to the dean." Everyone's gaze landed on Wei Xiaodong. No matter how much Wei Xiaodong hid in the corner, he could only brace himself and stand out. "I actually heard it from Cheng Kitian, but he's already dead. I didn't think he was this kind of person," Wei Xiaodong explained with an embarrassed expression. "In the end, you're blaming it all on a dead person?" Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but feel somewhat annoyed. Qin Deli and Wei Xiaodong were immediately frightened when they heard this. If this big shot was as angry as the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, then the two of them would really have to accompany Cheng Kitian. However, Ling Yuanqing was the dean of the Morning Star Academy after all, and he wasn't like the divine nun of the Eastern Sea who had her reverse scale touched. He wouldn't casually kill people, so he didn't plan on looking into this matter any further. There was no point. He knew Wei Xiaodong. Back when he was a vice shopkeeper in the Gaolin Sea of the Eastern Continent, he often went to the Morning Star Academy. Now that he was a shopkeeper in the Weyark Sea, he was still a member of the Hong Merchant Group. Ling Yuanqing wouldn't go so far as to make a move on someone from the Hong Merchant Group over such a small matter. Since that's the case, let's go back. Ling Yuanqing finally spoke. At the side, Wei Hebei let out a regretful sigh. He had come full of hope, but in the end, he had returned empty-handed. The so-called super genius that could instantly kill someone of a higher realm. But in the end, he had made such a blunder. How could he endure this? However, regret was regret. The truth had already come to light. The three of them were great figures of the mountain opening stage, so they couldn't stay in the tiny heavens equal escort agency for too long. Otherwise, they would be seen by outsiders who didn't know what kind of relationship the Morning Star Academy had with the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. The group stood up immediately, but Xinyan spoke up instead. "Master, Xiaodao is Master Ling Yi's junior, and we've worked together in the Equals Escort Agency before. It'd be a little unreasonable to let her go back with us like this. Why don't I stay with Xiaodao and treat them to a meal? It'll be a final farewell." "All right. Then when you go back tonight, I'll tell you something. Be careful on the road." The divine nun of the East Sea nodded in agreement. She had always doted on her two disciples, so she obviously would not turn down such a reasonable request. "Don't worry, Senior. Our escort agency will escort them back together," Lin Yi quickly said. "That's right. Although our Equal Heaven Escort Agency is only a small escort agency, we still have some deterrence in a place like Velvet Arc City. We won't let anyone spoil the mood of the two young ladies," Qi Wenhan also guaranteed. I'll have to trouble you then. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded before leaving with Ling Yuanqing and the others. Lin, Yi, and the others saw them off at the entrance. Only then did he turn around. Brother Ling, I was wondering why escort Huang didn't return. I was worried that something might have happened to her and didn't dare to ask you about it. Who would have thought that he would be chosen by the Morning Star Academy to become the personal disciple of the godly nun of the Eastern Sea? Brother Ling, you're too mean, not even telling me about this kind of thing. Qi Wenhan pretended to grumble as he patted Lin Yi's shoulder. Hee. Brother Qi, you never asked me before, so I couldn't bring it up. Otherwise, people would think I was showing off or even bragging. Lin Yi smiled. If it were anyone else, they would be eager to let the entire world know if their junior sister managed to climb up the social ladder and become the personal disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea. However, with his low-key personality, why would he do something like that? Not to mention that in terms of strength, potential, and heritage, Lin Yi was definitely a first-rate existence, and this was just him being humble. Other people would treat a major figure of the godly nun of the East Sea with reverence, but he would only look up to her at most. There would be a day when he would stand shoulder to shoulder with her, or even surpass her. As a result, he obviously did not believe that Huang Xiaodao was climbing up the social ladder by becoming her disciple. At most, he felt that the divine nun of the East Sea would not mistreat Huang Xiaodao. That's true. Escort Huang has never said anything before, so those who don't know really find it hard to believe. Qi Wenhan chuckled and said excitedly, "This is a joyous occasion. We have to celebrate it properly." Today was a joyous day for him and the entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. The arrival of the three major figures of the godly sect was enough to make the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency famous across the entire South Continent, or even in the upcoming escort agency gathering. However, what made Qi Wenhan even happier was that Cheng Ketian was dead, and he had died to the hands of the divine nun of the East Sea. He had endured this guy for a very long time, but he could not do anything about it. He never thought that he would be able to eliminate a great rival without any warning. Even a legendary pie falling from the sky could not compare to this. Moreover, Huang Xiaodao, who had always been missing, had actually become the personal disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea in the blink of an eye. This meant that as long as the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency maintained a good relationship with Ling Yi, they would also be able to rope in this super genius of the Morning Star Academy. He did not dare to say that he would be able to make the divine nun of the East Sea look at him in a different light. But even so, this was still an extremely enviable network. After all, a super genius that even the three major figures of the Morning Star Academy valued so much meant that he was destined to have a bright future ahead of him. Who knows, he might even be able to lean on a big tree and enjoy its shade. After listing all these good things, Qi Wenhan felt that he was simply blessed with good fortune. In the end, all of this was brought to him by Lin Yi. He immediately felt that he was really smart. Fortunately, he had taken a liking to Lin Yi at the docks back then, which was why he had so many good things coming his way today. Otherwise, not to mention so many good things, just the previous robbery incident alone would have kept him in the dark from the beginning to the end. Who knows, he might even be a fool now, being played around by that old fox Wei Xiaodong. Brother Ling, accompany the two ladies and chat for a while. I'll go arrange a banquet and treat you both to a good meal. Qi Wenhan said excitedly. After excusing himself to the two ladies, he personally led his men to arrange the banquet. Then let's go to my room for a while. Lin Yi smiled as he brought Xin Yan and Huang Xiaotao to his room. After all, this was the best guest room in the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, and the decorations were quite elegant. There was a small living room in the room, just enough for the three of them to talk. As soon as they got back to the room, the two girls could no longer hold themselves back. One on the left and the other on the right, they flew into Lin Yi's arms. The three of them hugged each other, and there was no physiological impulse that would make one blush. Instead, there was a faint but lingering sense of warmth, as if they were reuniting with family. Chapter 4361. How have you two been recently? Lin Yi asked with a smile after the three of them hugged each other quietly for a long time. Yes, big sister Xinyan treats me better than a real sister. Master also loves me very much. No matter what happens, he dotes on us as if we were his own daughters. You saw it just now, Huang Xiaotao said with a blissful expression. She originally thought it would be very hard to be separated from Lin Yi, but both Wang Xinyan and the divine nun of the Eastern Sea made her feel like home. Even if she missed Lin Yi all the time, her days were not as difficult as she imagined. On the contrary, she was very happy these days. Since her parents died when she was a child, she was forced to stay with relatives. Everyone around her treated her like a commodity rather than child. Even after they found out that she had a good aptitude for cultivation, she was just a rare commodity that could be hoarded. They never really cared about her. But now, not only did she have Lin Yi, she also had a gentle sister like Wang Xinyan and a motherly master like the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Huang Xiaodao was a very contented person. She already felt very happy to have so many people care for her. She would not ask for more. Lin Yi glanced at Wang Xinyan gratefully. He was secretly glad that all his women were so nice. Otherwise, it would be a headache if one of them got jealous easily. Wang Xinyan naturally knew what Lin Yi was thinking. She rolled her eyes at him flirtatiously, but then she couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. She had always been kind to others. Moreover, Huang Xiaodao got along so well with her. She would naturally treat Huang Xiaodao well from the bottom of her heart. Perhaps Wang Xinyan herself didn't realize that she was so understanding and magnanimous. Instead, it would make Lin Yi like her more, value her more, and love her more. Let's not talk about the two of us. How are you? You seem to be in trouble again? Wang Xinyan asked with concern. Although she did not know what Wei Xiaodong and the others were planning, this incident seemed to be a conspiracy no matter how she looked at it. If Lin Yi had not handled it properly just now, it might have been a disaster. Fortunately, the result was not bad. Not only did they not succeed, he even brought the other party into the picture. It is indeed a little troublesome, but it is not a big problem. I can handle it, Lin Yi said with a smile. It was rare for him to reunite with the two girls, and he didn't want to say anything that would dampen the mood at such a good time. Moreover, with his own strength, he was indeed able to deal with it. Tell us, are you going to tell us the good news and not the bad news in front of us? Then we'll do the same thing in the future. I won't tell you, no matter what trouble I'm in. Xinyan pursed her lips. Yes, I learned it from you, Huang Xiaotao added. I say, you two have only known each other for a few days, and you're already on the same side? Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only surrender and said, well, there's nothing else anyway. I'll tell you about it. That a good boy. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao were finally satisfied. They hugged Lin Yi's arms and sat down, indicating for Lin Yi to speak quickly. This time, they suddenly recommended me to the big three of the academy. It is certain that Wei Xiaodong and Chunketian are behind it. I believe you can see this, Lin Yi said. It is not strange that Chunketian is behind it. We have a grudge with him before, but Wei Xiaodong is the manager of the Hong Chamber of Commerce's branch, and he is Hong Zhong's old friend. There is no enmity between them, so why would he want to deal with you? Huang Xiaodao asked curiously. It can't be said that there is no enmity between them. At least from his point of view, I spoiled his plans, so he bears a grudge. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Spoiled his plans? What plans? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao were instantly even more curious. Xiaodao, do you remember when we were on a mission and were robbed by 4 pirates? I told you that there was something fishy about it. Actually, the fishy thing was that these pirates were hired by Wei Xiaodong himself. Lin Yi laughed coldly. He found someone to take back his own goods, and at the same time, he extorted a large sum of spirit jade from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. It was a total of 300,000 spirit jades. Compensate according to the price. This person is actually so black-hearted? Huang Xiaodao couldn't help but be speechless. She was different from Wang Xinyan. Because she knew that Wei Xiaodong was Hong Zhong's old friend, She had a preconceived impression that Wei Xiaodong was a good person. That is the truth. If I hadn't caught those 4 pirates by chance, I wouldn't have believed that Wei Xiaodong was actually such a person. You still don't know that the goods that he took back were life-saving goods for the Fong family on Rock Island. This is a life-saving item for the hundreds of people in the Fong clan village on Rock Island. Otherwise, they would not have been able to escape this time. Lenny sighed. What happened after that? After you caught the pirates and caught them red-handed, he couldn't deny it, could he? Wang Xinyan asked. Although we caught them red-handed, this old fox is cunning and stubborn. Even if we brought witnesses to confront him, he would insist that it was false. After all, he was the manager of a branch of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. We couldn't force him, so we couldn't do anything to him. He shook his head. So you're saying that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was cheated of 300,000 spirit jades by him, but they could do nothing about it? Wang Xinyan asked in surprise. Everyone in the agency is helpless, but that is the truth. I can only say that people change. This time, even Hong Zhong was wrong about him. He spread his hands and said, This Wei Xiaodong is really bad. He disregarded the lives of hundreds of people. Not only did he frame the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, but he also framed you this time. We can't let him go so easily. Even with Huang Xiaodao's gentle personality, she was filled with righteous indignation after hearing this. She turned to Wang Xinyan and said, Sister Xinyan, why don't we ask Master for help and punish him? She knew that he was going to stay in the Wei territorial waters for a while. If she didn't get rid of this threat, Wei Xiaodong, as soon as possible, she wouldn't be at ease leaving. Moreover, the Morningstar Academy had a high status. If the godly nun of the Eastern Sea personally intervened, no matter how cunning Wei Xiaodong was, he wouldn't dare to argue in front of a mountain opening period giant. Wang Xinyan was a little hesitant. After staying in the Morningstar Academy for more than a year, she knew more than Huang Xiaodao. She shook her head slightly and said, Sister Xiaodao, although the Academy has a high status, we can't ruin our relationship with a top chamber of commerce like the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, we'll be in a passive position in the future. After all, we don't have any relations. Even a mountain opening period giant like our master can't casually punish someone from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. This is a big taboo. Didn't you see that Dean Ling was very angry just now, but he still let Wei Xiaodong go? Chapter 4362. Huang Xiaodao was simple-minded, but the sects did not interfere with each other. This was the most basic rule of the pugilistic world. She said awkwardly, Then what should we do? Are we just going to let Wei Xiaodong continue to roam freely? That's too infuriating. Wang Xinyan was also in a difficult position. She was the same as Huang Xiaodao. Of course, she wanted to help get rid of Wei Xiaodong before she left. But if she went to ask her master for help, it would put him in a difficult position. What should she do? You two are too stubborn. Who said that you have to ask your master to deal with Wei Xiaodong? Someone like Wei Xiaodong, is he worthy of a mountain opening stage powerhouse to deal with him personally? He said with a smile as he looked at the awkward expressions of the two girls. But with just the 3 of us, are we going to force our way in? If we don't have a good reputation, it won't be so easy to break into the Hong Merchant Association. Wei Xiaodong is a sly old fox. Who knows, he might bite back at us. Wang Xinyan said worriedly. She knew that even if it was a branch, the Hong Merchant Association would definitely have a guest expert overseeing it. They couldn't just barge in. If they didn't have a good reputation, once things got out of hand, they would be attacked by Wei Xiaodong instead. That's not necessarily true. The Academy can't deal with Wei Xiaodong, but I can. He smiled mysteriously. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao were stunned and looked at each other. Xiaodao, have you forgotten? I seem to have mentioned it to you before. I'm not an outsider in the Hong Merchant Association. I'm one of them. I'm their honorary vice president. He said with a smile. That's right. Huang Xiaodao suddenly remembered. Because this was just a title, it was usually not used. If he hadn't mentioned it, she wouldn't have remembered it. Honorary vice president? Wang Xinyan's eyes lit up. That's great. This position doesn't have any real power, but it's a good position. However, his status is there, and his authority to speak is unquestionable. Coupled with the evidence in his hands, it is perfect to deal with a branch manager like Wei Xiaodong. That's right. Wei Xiaodong is a man who has committed heinous crimes. I can't let him continue doing as he pleases. Even from the perspective of an honorary vice president, I have to do my part for the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Lin, he made up his mind. If I want to deal with Wei Xiaodong, the first thing I'll have to do is take over the ARC branch from him. That's why I need the two of you to help me. How can I help? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao were raring to go. Neither of them liked to fight, but they couldn't wait to deal with Wei Xiaodong for Lin Yi. It's very simple. Come with me to deal with the guest expert there. If there is no accident, Wei Xiaodong himself is a nascent soul stage expert, and when the time comes, he will certainly not let himself be captured. They will definitely incite the other foreign dignitaries to deal with us. In order to prevent things from getting out of hand, we must end the battle as soon as possible, Lin Yi analyzed. Okay. Huang Xiaodao nodded happily without another word. She was already used to doing whatever Lin Yi said, let alone controlling the Arc Rose branch. Even if he burned it down, she would probably do it. She would probably do as he said. Okay, got it. Wang Xinyan thought for a while and nodded as well. She was more sensitive than Huang Xiaodao, so she naturally considered more things, such as the feasibility of doing this and the consequences it would bring to Lin Yi. Of course, Lin Yi's matters were her matters. She would definitely not just stand by and watch. However, she had to think clearly before taking action. So far, Lin Yi's method should be the most direct and effective. Huang Xiaodao had already told her before that their combined attack could easily kill a nascent soul cultivator. As for Wang Xinyan herself, she was an early nascent soul cultivator and a direct disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea that she had raised with great care. Killing a nascent soul cultivator was nothing difficult for her. According to common sense, the guest experts assigned to each branch by the Hong Chamber of Commerce were all at the original infant stage, but the number would not be too many. Even in a large branch like the North Island, there would only be 4. In a small branch like the Sea of Crescent Arc, there would only be 2 at most. Therefore, if there were no accidents, the success rate of quickly ending the battle was very high. Other than that, the Morningstar Academy was like a tiger and a wolf. No matter when or where, it would never be forbidden for the disciples to fight. On the contrary, all the rules and regulations tended to encourage the disciples to compete, and this so-called competition, in other words, was to cause trouble. Under the encouragement of such an atmosphere, the disciples of the Morningstar Academy caused a lot of trouble outside. As long as they did not poke a hole in the heavens, as long as they were able to take responsibility, the Academy would never blame them. Compared to the other disciples who would get restless if they did not do anything every day, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao were definitely obedient. Causing trouble occasionally was in line with the temperament of the Academy. Moreover, even if the 2 of them took action, they had the protection of the towering divine nun of the Eastern Sea, so there would not be any problems. From a certain perspective, as long as the 2 of them took action with Lin Yi, it would be equivalent to pulling Lin Yi under the protection of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea as well. Even if something happened, they would not have to worry about it. Lin Yi had always been a man of action. After the 3 of them made up their minds, they only got the guards outside to inform Qi Wenhan. They did not say what they were going to do, and they directly rushed to the Hong Merchant Association. By now, it was already dark, and there were not many customers. The Hong Merchant Association was just about to close for the day, but in the end, Lin Yi directly rushed in with the 2 girls. "Sir, our shop is already closed for the day. Please come back early tomorrow." The employee hurriedly stopped them. "Come back early?" Lin Yi could not help but laugh when he heard that. He glanced at the employee and said playfully, "Do you think it's time to line up to cause trouble? It's none of your business. Hurry up and call Wei Xiaodong out. You won't be able to handle this today." Cause trouble? The employee was taken aback. He had been in the Hong Merchant Association for so many years, but he had never seen anyone who dared to cause trouble. Even the most notorious poison mercenaries did not dare to do so. However, sensing the auras of experts from Lin, Yi, and the other two, the employee immediately did not dare to say anything else. This was indeed not something he could handle. He ran into the inner hall in a hurry and called Wei Xiaodong out. Wei Xiaodong was originally drinking tea to calm himself down. What happened at the Equal Heaven Escort Agency had truly scared him silly. In particular, when Ling Yuanxin flew into a rage at the end, the manager of a branch of the Hong Merchant Association, had been so frightened that his legs had turned to jelly, and he had almost knelt down on the spot. Today, he had truly taken a trip to the gates of hell. Chapter 4363. It's all that idiot Cheng Ketien's fault. He's hopelessly stupid. Not only did he seek his own death, he almost dragged me down with him. I must have been blind to work with such an idiot. Wei Xiaodong was still feeling gloomy and afraid when he saw the shop assistant running in with a panicked face, claiming that someone was here to cause trouble. "What are you guys doing?" Wei Xiaodong hurriedly followed the shop assistant out. After seeing Lin, Yi, and the others, he was stunned. "What are we doing?" Linny looked at him, crossed his arms, and smiled. "That depends on how you interpret it. We're here to investigate you, Shopkeeper Wei, for breaking the law. Of course, from your point of view, we're here to cause trouble." "You're right, Shopkeeper Wei. They were really fucking wrecking the place." Wei Xiaodong's mouth twitched. He could ignore Lin Yi, but he did not dare to underestimate Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. These two were the direct disciples of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. If he offended them, it was equivalent to offending the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. That was not a joke. Cheng Ketien's tragic death was a living example. Therefore, even if the other party said that they were causing trouble, as long as the situation did not develop beyond control, Wei Xiaodong could only pretend that he did not hear it. "Investigating me for violating the law?" Wei Xiaodong pretended to be shocked. "Did I hear wrongly? Although your Morningstar Academy has a high status, there's no reason for you to interfere with the Hong Merchant Association's business. I'm afraid this is against the rules, right? Do the seniors in the academy know what you're doing? Moreover, what have I done to violate the law?" A series of rhetorical questions, coupled with Wei Xiaodong's shocked and innocent expression, could easily fool a normal person. However, Lin Yi and the others obviously did not care about him. "You're right. The Morningstar Academy cannot interfere. They have no reason to interfere with you, but I can." As Lin Yi spoke, he suddenly took out a beautiful purple gold jade pendant. The words Hong Merchant Association could be vaguely seen in the center of the jade. The others did not understand, but Wei Xiaodong only took a look, and his expression changed. He was immediately stunned. This was an extremely rare purple gold jade. Even though it was just a small piece, it would fetch at least tens of thousands of spirit jades in an auction, or even more. Wei Xiaodong had seen many good things, but the problem was that this purple gold jade pendant had a special meaning in the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In the Hong Consortium's Chamber of Commerce, as long as one was a high-ranking member of the vice president level, they would all have a jade pendant that could prove their identity. The president was Mo Jinyu. The vice president was Lan Jinyu, and this purple Jinyu represented the non-staff higher-ups who had made special contributions to the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In other words, he was the honorary vice president. Because these three types of golden jades were extremely rare, and the Hong Chamber of Commerce's unique array was specially set up inside, it was impossible for outsiders to imitate it. Therefore, as long as he took it out, no matter which branch he went to, it would be enough to prove his identity. However, the existence of the purple gold jade pendant in the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce could only be clearly told to those who had reached the level of a branch manager. As for ordinary guest experts or ordinary workers and manservants, they might not be able to see it in their entire lives due to their low level. Most of them knew nothing about this. "What exactly do you want?" Wei Xiaodong's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. He asked calmly as he quickly thought of a way to deal with it. He had acquaintances in the headquarters and knew that Hong Zhong had recently been promoted to vice president. At the same time, there was also an honorary vice president. However, he never expected that Lin Yi was actually this mysterious honorary vice president. Manager Wei, seems to be someone who knows his stuff. You know what this purple gold jade pendant represents? Then I won't beat around the bush. As the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce, I announce that I am taking over this branch. Everyone, including Wei Xiaodong, will be investigated by me. Lin Yi announced loudly. There was an uproar in the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce. Everyone looked at each other. What was going on? Why did an honorary vice president suddenly appear and want to investigate the entire branch? Not only the staff, even the two foreign chamberlains who were in charge of this place had shock in their eyes. They did not know about the purple gold jade pendant, but at least they knew that the honorary vice president was indeed someone who could take over the entire branch at a critical moment. Wei Xiaodong saw everyone's reaction and panicked. He knew that he had to react quickly. Otherwise, once everyone accepted this fact, he would never be able to turn the tables again. Men, arrest this fella who is pretending to be the honorary vice president. Wei Xiaodong made a prompt decision and shouted, "This person is clearly called Ling Yi, a mere escort from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. How could he be the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce? The name on this jade pendant is clearly written as Lin Yi. This person is pretending to be a senior member of the headquarters. He must have ulterior motives." As soon as he said that, everyone looked at Lin Yi suspiciously. What kind of person was the honorary vice president? Why would he be a lowly escort at the Equals Escort Agency? Wei Xiaodong was right. This person was an imposter. One of them was the shopkeeper of his own branch, an absolute superior. The other was a lowly escort from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, a nobody. To the people present, it was clear at a glance who they should trust. There was no need to hesitate at all. However, for the other ordinary staff, no matter who they believed, it would not affect the outcome. This was because they were weak and would never participate in battles. On the heavenly stage island, no matter what happened, the only thing that could truly decide the outcome was strength. Only the person with the biggest fist would be able to laugh at the end. Wei Xiaodong was well aware of this. Hence, his words were not directed at the others, but at the two original infant stage guest experts. With that, the two guest experts believed him as expected. They immediately unleashed their chi and stood to the left and right of Lin Yi's group, eyeing them covetously. Together with Wei Xiaodong, who was also original infant stage expert, they had already surrounded Lin Yi's group. Once they began fighting later, they would have the advantage just by standing there. Ling Yi, even if you really can deal with original infant stage experts, there are 3 original infant stage experts here, including me. Do you really think you can do anything to me? Wei Xiaodong sneered and refused to give up. I'd advise you to be a little more sensible and back off. I can pretend that nothing happened today. That way, not only will you lose your life, but you'll also drag down the 2 great disciples of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Chapter 43-64. At the end of the day, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao's identities were a threshold that he could not cross. Unless he had no other choice, Wei Xiaodong really did not want to risk his life. Otherwise, if he accidentally injured the 2 of them, he would not be able to endure the wrath of the founding divine nun of the East Sea. Lin Yi ignored Wei Xiaodong and looked at the 2 guest experts. He said indifferently, "You 2, other people may not know what's good, but can you not resist my purple gold jade pendant? Even if you haven't seen it with your own eyes, you must have heard of it. Wei Xiaodong is completely heartless and evil. If you continue to help him, you'll be the accomplice of the evildoer. You'll be guilty of the same crime. I advise you not to make a mistake." When he received the purple gold jade pendant from Hong Zhong, Lin Yi had heard Hong Zhong mention that in the Hong Clan Merchant Association, those who were not high enough would not know what the jade pendant represented. However, the guest experts were an exception. They had to go to the headquarters on Middle Island for inspection and training every once in a while. If they were not so inexperienced, they might know the origin of the jade pendant. After all, they were all members of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If there was no need, he didn't want to kill them all. However, the two guest experts turned a deaf ear to his words. There wasn't even a hint of hesitation on their faces. They just stared coldly at the three of them, as if they would attack without hesitation as long as Wei Xiaodong gave the order. "Ha! Ling Yi, don't waste your effort. You're just an escort from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Who would believe you if you pretended to be the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association? Or do you always do things without using your brain?" Wei Xiaodong laughed mockingly. Of course, he knew that the purple gold jade pendant in Lin Yi's hand was real. Even the two guest experts already understood a little, but he was still fearless. The reason was simple. Although he had not completely controlled the entire branch in the years he had been in the Wei territorial waters, he had at least bribed the two guest experts to become jackals of the same tribe. The guest experts did not have a subordinate relationship with the branch manager. However, their relationship was often very close. This phenomenon was common in the various branches of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In the past few years, the two guest experts present had long become a community of interests with Wei Xiaodong. It could be said that they were in the same boat. After all, robbing someone halfway was risky. Those pirates were people who killed without batting an eyelid. Without an expert looking for them, it was very likely that they would be betrayed. Is that so? There was no other way. I originally only wanted to deal with Wei Xiaodong, but since the two of you insist on blocking the way, then don't blame me for being impolite. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. You still dare to talk big. Facing three original infant stage cultivators, do you even have a 5% chance of winning? Don't try to deceive yourselves. Since you came looking for trouble, even if I were to kill you, the Morning Star Academy wouldn't be able to say anything. Wei Xiaodong coldly snorted as he threatened. However, before he could finish his sentence, suddenly, Lin Yi's eyes flashed. He didn't care about anything else and directly attacked. Wei Xiaodong knew that Lin Yi and the other two did not come with good intentions, but from just now until now, he wasn't too worried. After all, no matter how he looked at it, the three original infant stage cultivators on his side had the absolute upper hand in terms of strength. In his opinion, as long as Lin Yi was not completely stupid, he should be able to retreat in the face of difficulties and not invite humiliation. But he never expected. Regarding the evaluation of each other's strength, Lin Yi's side did not see it this way. The strength of the three original infant stage cultivators was indeed not to be underestimated. However, with Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao, the two publicly recognized super geniuses of the Morning Star Academy, and the even more powerful Lin Yi, in front of these three people, everything else was just fleeting clouds. It could only be said that no matter how cunning Wei Xiaodong was, he was still just a mortal. In front of super geniuses like Lin Yi who were already used to killing those who were a higher level than him, any method of using a mortal's thinking to guess the situation was extremely stupid. From the beginning to the end, they were not on the same level at all. Frenzied 8 trigrams palm strike. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaodao attacked at the same time with great tacit understanding. 2 8 trigrams palms hit the guest expert on the left side at the same time. This person was a dignified original infant stage cultivator, but he made the same mistake as Wei Xiaodong. Not only did he misjudge the situation, but he even somewhat underestimated the enemy. So at this time, he was so stunned that he did not even have the chance to react. After being hit by the 2 palms, his eyes turned white on the spot. Amidst the screams of the servants, he flew out like a kite with a broken string and directly flew out of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. There was no movement for a long time, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. At the same time, on the other side, Wang Xinyan also attacked. The martial arts she used were neither fist nor palm techniques, nor leg techniques or weapons. The only movement was to put her hands together. The other people did not notice anything strange, but the guest expert on her right suddenly changed in expression. He felt a series of sounds of different heights suddenly ring out from all directions. It was like a series of mountains that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Not only did it disturb his mind, but even more terrifyingly, it seemed to be able to confuse the soul, causing the true chi in his meridians to stagnate. The guest expert immediately paled in fright. However, his first reaction was not to retreat, but to advance instead, charging straight at Wang Xinyan. Since this person was able to become a guest expert of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he definitely had some skills. At the very least, his instinctive reaction at this moment was definitely worthy of praise. If he chose to turn around and escape at this moment, he would only expose more openings behind him, and he would only die faster. However, while the choice of advancing instead of retreating was not wrong, it was a pity that he had underestimated the strength of Wang Xinyan, the direct disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Unlike Lin, Yi, and Huang Xiaodao, Wang Xinyan was a true early-stage nascent soul expert. With her extraordinary talent and the careful guidance of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea over the past year, it could only be said that the current Wang Xinyan was not an existence that regular nascent soul experts could contend with. The guest expert was already very fast, but before he could reach Wang Xinyan, the sounds coming from all directions became louder and louder, affecting his soul more and more. He suddenly raised his head and immediately gasped. Behind Wang Xinyan, a shadow that looked like black fog had appeared out of nowhere. The shadow pressed down like a mountain, and one could tell with a single glance that it was not an existence of the mortal world. It faintly gave off a transcendent aura, as if it was above everything in the mortal world. Before it, a mighty nascent soul expert felt like a lower creature in front of a higher creature. His body began to tremble instinctively, and he did not dare to take another step forward. Chapter 4365. Wang Xinyan continued to put her palms together like a saintess. She did not move at all, but her lips moved slightly, and she slowly said, "Seal of mountains and seas." Immediately, the mountain-like phantom behind her suddenly rolled over out of thin air. At this moment, the genuine chi in the body of the guest minister was stagnant, not to mention resisting. He couldn't even dodge. He was directly crushed to the ground by the phantom, leaving a pool of bright red blood and mud, and nothing else. Everyone was dead silent. They looked at Wang Xinyan as if they were looking at a monster. Although Lin, Yi, and Huang Xiaodao had also instantly killed a guest expert, everyone could at least see how they did it. However, they did not see Wang Xinyan move at all. What kind of move was this? They only saw Wang Xinyan put her palms together, say 4 words softly, and the guest expert was directly turned into a pool of blood. Even a crafty person like Wei Xiaodong was frightened by such a shocking scene. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaodao working together to instantly kill a guest expert was already shocking enough. He did not think that Wang Xinyan would be even more terrifying. From start to end, he could not even see how she did it. Thinking back to how the divine nun of the Eastern Sea had killed Cheng Qitian with a single glance at the Heaven's equal escort agency, and now that they were in a different place, Wang Xinyan's casual words had directly killed a guest expert. Wei Xiaodong could not help but wonder, were these master and disciple even human? Impressive. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaodao were also shocked by this scene and sighed inwardly. Good, I didn't embarrass master. Wang Xinyan stuck out her tongue cutely. This seal of mountains and seas was the divine nun of the Eastern Sea's signature martial technique, as well as the main martial technique she had been cultivating for the past year. If she cannot even deal with a mere nascent soul guest expert, then even the heavens would not tolerate it. The entire place was dead silent. Everyone looked at each other, and their gazes towards Lin Yi and the others were filled with respect. As for Wei Xiaodong, who had been brimming with confidence, this time his mouth was agape, and he could not say anything for a long time. 3 original infant stage experts. Lin Yi smiled faintly and walked up to Wei Xiaodong as if there was no one else around. He patted Wei Xiaodong's shoulder and said, "Now you're the only one left. Shopkeeper Wei, tell me, how should I deal with you?" You guys. Faced with Lin Yi's mocking words, Lin Yi's eyes widened. Wei Xiaodong could only retreat. Even though he knew that the other party was only an expert in the intermediate stage of the Gold Core realm, he did not dare to make a move. After all, the strength that the three of them displayed in an instant was too terrifying. Taking advantage of the fact that the other party had let their guard down and they were so close to each other, if they could seize the opportunity to capture Ling Yi, that would be the best solution. However, Wei Xiaodong did not lose his cool in the end. After all, he was not a fool. After the scene just now, he had clearly realized that these three people could not be judged by common sense. It seemed like a good opportunity, but if he acted rashly, there was a 99% chance that he would fail. He would die a horrible death. What about us? Things have already come to this. Could it be that Shopkeeper Wei still intends to resist stubbornly to the end? I don't think Shopkeeper Wei is that stupid, right? Lin Yi laughed coldly. In just one move, they had killed two foreign experts. Now, the three of them had completely shocked everyone in the Celestial Arc branch. At the same time, they had also completely controlled the situation. If he wanted to kill Wei Xiaodong, he could do it now. However, Lin Yi did not intend to do that. What he wanted was to smoothly take over the Celestial Arc branch. If he killed Wei Xiaodong in front of everyone, it would certainly vent his anger, but it would be difficult to deal with the aftermath. Not only would the people in the Celestial Arc branch be anxious, but it would also be difficult to explain to the headquarters of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. No matter what, Wei Xiaodong was a shopkeeper with real power. If they wanted to deal with him, they could only let the Hong Chamber of Commerce handle it themselves. Although Lin was the honorary vice president, he could not just kill him on his own accord. That would turn a good thing into a bad thing. Wei Xiaodong was a shrewd person. He instantly noticed Lin Yi's concerns. He knew that the other party would not dare to kill him just like that. His originally bowed back immediately straightened up. Wow, as disciples of the Morning Star Academy, you actually dare to commit crimes with swindlers and swindlers. You dare to come to our Hong Chamber of Commerce to kill people. I will report this to the dean of your academy. Wei Xiaodong instantly jumped up and shouted. He knew that Ling Yi would definitely not be scared away. However, if he could scare Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao away, it would be much easier today. After all, putting aside their strength, the identity of the two women was what he was most afraid of. Wei Xiaodong took it for granted that the two women were young and impetuous. After hearing Lin Yi's slanderous words, they came to stand up for him. It was just like how students were afraid of being found out by their teachers when they did bad things. As long as he mentioned the dean of the academy, the two women might not dare to be so unbridled. Unexpectedly, the two women giggled when they heard that. Wang Xinyan raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled. Then go. You. Wei Xiaodong instantly exploded in anger. The other party's fearless attitude clearly showed that they had him under their control. Truly, a tiger that fell to the plains would be bullied by dogs. He was a shopkeeper of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, but he was actually being controlled by a few young juniors. Us? Shopkeeper Wei, you don't have to worry about our matters. You should be more concerned about your own fate. Lin Yi sneered. He then took a specially made black gold chain from the shelf and tied Wei Xiaodong firmly without saying a word. This was the equipment used by the law enforcement hall of the Sea region to enforce the family rules. Tying it on the body would greatly affect the circulation of qi. Even an original infant stage expert would not be able to break free. It was something that he had obtained from the previous auctions. Its value was not very high, but in a situation like this, it just happened to come in handy. In the process of being tied up, although Wei Xiaodong was flustered and exasperated, he did not dare to resist at all. He was afraid that if he was not careful, he would follow in the footsteps of the two foreign experts and be killed by Lin Yi and the other two daring fellows. At this time, the other workers and manservants were completely dumbfounded. They were all trembling with fear and did not know what to do. From a psychological point of view, they naturally trusted their immediate superior, Wei Xiaodong, and would not trust an outsider like Lin Yi. However, the problem was that strength determined everything. At this moment, there were only 3 original infant stage experts here. The 2 foreign experts had already been sent flying. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. The remaining Wei Xiaodong was tied up. What could they do? Could it be that they would fight to the death with Lin Yi and the other 2? Don't look at how many people there were. If they really fought, even if they all attacked together, they would not even be enough to fill the gaps between the opponent's teeth. Chapter 4366. They couldn't beat him, and they couldn't escape either. The only thing they could do was to continue standing there, trembling with fear, and wait for Lin Yi's group to make their next move. Everyone listen up. I am now the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, temporarily taking over the Wei Arc branch. Lin Yi announced loudly. Lin Yi's gaze slowly swept across everyone's faces, and everyone who was swept by his gaze involuntarily lowered their heads, not daring to meet his gaze. They didn't know if he was really the honorary vice president, but at least they knew that everything was up to him. Where is the vice president? Lin Yi suddenly asked. No one answered, but everyone's gaze had already given the answer, and all of them were looking at a middle-aged man at the side. Lin Yi followed everyone's gaze and saw that this middle-aged man had a docile expression. Rather than saying that he was honest, it was better to say that he had the temperament of a typical punching bag. With one look, one could tell that this fellow was definitely not a strong person. The middle-aged man originally had his neck shrunk, but seeing everyone looking at him, especially Lin Yi's group, he instantly panicked and hurriedly walked out. I am Honest Chai, the vice president of this branch. I pay my respects to the vice president. The middle-aged man stuttered as he carefully paid his respects. Even though he was the vice president, he relied purely on his experience to climb up and did not have any connections among the higher-ups in the headquarters. Naturally, he didn't know anything about the purple gold jade pendant, and his attitude towards Lin Yi's group was the same as that of the other workers. However, Honest Chai was a cowardly person, and Lin Yi's group was not to be trifled with. Even someone as powerful as Wei Xiaodong was bullied to the point of losing his temper, so he naturally didn't dare to contradict them in public. Since Lin Yi said that he was the honorary vice president, then he would treat it as such. Were you involved in Wei Xiaodong's matters? Lin Yi sized up this person. Many people looked honest at first glance, but in actuality, they were just hiding their strength deeply. Since this person was the vice president under the old fox Wei Xiaodong, it was very possible that he couldn't be underestimated. Perhaps they were jackals of the same tribe. Reporting to vice president. I'm purely idle. I don't know anything. Honest Chai was so scared that he peed his pants and quickly shook his head in denial. Completely unemployed? Lin Yi frowned and couldn't help but ask doubtfully, since you're a dignified vice manager, how could you be unemployed? In any branch of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, the deputy manager was the second most powerful person. Although he did not manage the overall situation like the manager, he still had a lot of power. Wei Xiaodong in the Gaolin Sea. He was a living example. If he didn't have enough power, he wouldn't be able to cooperate with Qin Deli to fill his pockets. How could a person in such an important position be idle? How could he not know anything? It's true. Every word I say is the truth. I won't dare to lie. If I do, may the heavens punish me. Honest Chai hurriedly swore. If he was seen as Wei Xiaodong's accomplice by Lin Yi, he wouldn't even have a place to cry. His death would be even more unjust than Do Yi's. You don't have to be anxious. Whether it's true or not, I'll find someone to ask. Lin Yi said indifferently, then signaled Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao to keep a close eye on the tied-up Wei Xiaodong. He then casually called for an assistant. Lin Yi brought the assistant into the guest hall, leaving Honest Chai and the rest to wait anxiously outside. Just now, that deputy manager Chai said he was unemployed. Is that true? Lin Yi turned to look at the assistant and asked without batting an eyelid. It's true. The assistant was just a heaven-rank expert who hadn't even reached foundation establishment. In front of Lin Yi, he was no different from an ordinary person. Just a casual glance from Lin Yi caused his heart to palpitate. Oh, he's a deputy manager with real power. How is he unemployed? Why don't you tell me? Lin Yi asked suspiciously. It's true. This lowly one doesn't dare to lie. Deputy manager Chai doesn't really do anything. Everything in our branch is managed by Manager Wei. Deputy Manager Chai rarely shows his face. The assistant was afraid that Lin Yi wouldn't believe him and was about to cry. Rarely shows his face? You're saying that this guy is usually lazy? Lin Yi continued to ask. No, it's not that. Manager Chai has never been lazy in the past. He has always been diligent. However, a few years ago, after Manager Wei was transferred here, he didn't really manage things. The assistant carefully replied. That means this honest Chai was pushed aside by Wei Xiaodong? Between them, did they have any open conflicts? Lin Yi thoughtfully pinched his chin. The assistant thought carefully and said, if we're talking about open conflicts, it was a few years ago. When Manager Wei was just transferred here, he forcefully took over all the businesses that Deputy Manager Chai was in charge of. At that time, Deputy Manager Chai tried to reason with him. At that time, Manager Wei didn't say anything, nor did he get angry. However, Deputy Manager Chai disappeared for a month. He said that he went to the headquarters in Middle Island. Other than that, there were no other conflicts. Basically, no matter what Manager Wei said, Deputy Manager Chai didn't participate, nor did he express his opinion. Disappeared for a month? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little strange. Seeing that the assistant wanted to say something, he said, tell me everything you know. Don't force me to use this soul-searching technique. Yes. The assistant didn't know that Lin Yi didn't know any soul-searching technique and was just trying to scare him. He didn't dare to hide anything and quickly said, I heard that during that month, Deputy Manager Chai didn't actually go to the headquarters in Middle Island. Instead, he was injured by someone and had to rest for a whole month. Rest for a month? That means it was Wei Xiaodong's doing? The corner of Lin Yi's mouth curled up slightly. Deputy Manager Chai never mentioned it to anyone. We don't know either, but that's what everyone guessed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so afraid of Manager Wei. They didn't dare to do anything and just made him a mere figurehead. The assistant said carefully, Yes, I understand. You can go out and ask Honest Chai to come in. Lenny nodded. He had been paying attention to the assistant's expression from beginning to end. He didn't find anything strange. In other words, what this person said should be true. Moreover, the things he revealed matched with Honest Chai's temperament and behavior just now. It was impossible to fabricate anything on the spot, so it had enough credibility. Yes. Only then did the assistant let out a long breath. Chapter 4367. The shop assistant was drenched in sweat, as if he had just walked through the gates of hell. It wasn't because he felt guilty, but because the invisible pressure from Lin Yi's body was too strong. As a shop assistant who didn't even have the strength of a foundation establishment stage, he couldn't withstand it. After a while, Honest Chai walked in quietly and stood in front of Lin Yi. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly as he lowered his head and whispered, Vice Chairman, what instructions do you have for me? I heard that your relationship with Wei Xiaodong isn't that good. Lin Yi glanced at him and smiled mysteriously. There was a small misunderstanding in the past. Honest Chai replied cautiously. He knew that Lin Yi must have heard this from the shop assistant just now. Moreover, it wasn't a bad thing to let the other party know about this. At least, he could clear himself of the suspicion of being in cahoots with Wei Xiaodong. However, Honest Chai didn't know what Lin Yi was planning to do with Wei Xiaodong. Thus, he didn't dare to be happy too early. Small misunderstanding? A vice shopkeeper was made a mere figurehead and even had to recuperate for a month. You call this a small misunderstanding? You're quite a magnanimous person. Lin Yi smiled and said, Let me ask you, do you have any evidence of Wei Xiaodong's crimes? He only asked this question after hearing the shop assistant's words. He originally wanted to find an honest person to help him manage the branch, but if he could use it to deal with Wei Xiaodong, then he would naturally be more than happy to do so. Evidence? Honest Chai was taken aback, and his expression became hesitant. He didn't know what to do and said, do you have it or not? Cut the crap. Lin Yi directly cut him off. Wei Xiaodong's matter had to be resolved as soon as possible. Otherwise, if this dragged on for too long, there might be some unexpected changes. Wei Xiaodong wasn't a fool. While he was doing bad things, he also wanted to ensure his safety. He would definitely drag a lot of people down with him. Among them might be the higher-ups of the Hong Chamber of Commerce's headquarters or other influential figures. By the time these people reacted and interfered, the pressure that Lin Yi would face would be as great as a mountain. If things really developed to that point, unless he let go, he would become enemies with a large group of people because of an insignificant Wei Xiaodong. With Lin Yi's personality, it was impossible for him to lower his head to these people. But he didn't want any unexpected twists and turns, because in his plan, someone else would take over this matter, and he wouldn't be the one to carry it out to the end. Even if it was for the sake of the person who would take over, he had to cut the Gordian knot and control the impact to the minimum. Being stared at by Lin Yi at such a close distance, Honest Chai, who was already trembling in fear, became even more fearful. His back was already soaked in cold sweat. Back then, he had killed his way up from the mortal world. In the year after arriving at Heaven Stage Island, he had encountered all sorts of fortuitous encounters, and his strength had advanced by leaps and bounds. Even Lin Yi himself didn't realize that his aura was so much stronger than it used to be. Furthermore, although he looked calm normally deep down in his bones, Lin Yi was an extremely powerful person, and his aura was equally oppressive. If it wasn't for the fact that he always kept a low profile, he wouldn't have been able to do anything. If he didn't keep a low profile, normal people wouldn't be able to stand in front of him. Even Golden Core experts of the same level would feel as though they were standing next to an overlord-level beast, trembling in fear as though they were walking on thin ice. Honest Chai had a deep understanding of this feeling. Although Wei Xiaodong had always been overbearing, he relied on all sorts of sinister methods to intimidate others. As for this Ling Yi in front of him, he only needed to stand there and look at you. He did not even need to do anything, and you would not be able to endure it. Honest Chai originally didn't want to reveal everything, but he really couldn't withstand Lin Yi's pressure. He could only grit his teeth and admit it. Otherwise, if he really didn't reveal it, he couldn't guarantee that this fiendish person in front of him wouldn't take care of him as well. Let me have a look. Lin Yi's eyes lit up. He was just trying to ask on a whim, but he didn't expect that he really had it. This was an unexpected surprise. Yes, please wait a moment. At this point, Honest Chai didn't have any more hesitation. Seeing Lin Yi nod his head, he immediately returned to his room to look for the evidence that he had secretly collected. No matter how honest or cowardly a person was, they would still have a temper. After being bullied by Wei Xiaodong for so many years, he was originally a vice shopkeeper of a branch, but now, he was just a mere figurehead. He was even beaten up to recuperate for an entire month. If Honest Chai could really swallow this humiliation, he would probably be able to become an immortal. Thus, all these years, Honest Chai didn't participate in anything, turning a blind eye to everything. Wherever Wei Xiaodong went, he would hide. However, he had always been secretly collecting evidence, waiting for an opportunity. It was a pity that Wei Xiaodong had people protecting him in the Middle Island headquarters, and he had never met any of the higher-ups, not to mention having a powerful backer. Even if he had a pile of evidence in his hands, he didn't dare to make a move. There was no other reason. If you don't kill a snake, you will be harmed instead. Honest Chai, would not be able to withstand Wei Xiaodong's counterattack. Even though he felt wronged, it was better to live than to die. A moment later, Honest Chai returned with an account book in his hands. This is the evidence. Lin Yi glanced at Honest Chai and casually flipped through the account book. He was instantly baffled because the method of accounting was very unique and could even be said to be messy. After all, Different professions are worlds apart, and Lin, he had never studied in this field before, so he couldn't see through it. Yes, Honest Chai carefully observed Lin Yi's expression. This evidence was the fruit of his many years of hard work, and it was a powerful weapon that could topple Wei Xiaodong. However, the prerequisite was that it must land in the hands of a powerful character. After all, the evidence was dead while the person was alive. If it was an ordinary person, even if they had this evidence, it would be useless. This was because Wei Xiaodong could make use of his backer in the Middle Island headquarters to make this evidence into a false one. It was also because of this that Honest Chai didn't dare to take out the evidence. He was afraid that Ling Wan's capabilities were not enough, and he was even more afraid that this so-called honorary vice president was not real and was just a liar. However, worrying was one thing, and Honest Chai was ultimately not a daring person. In front of Lin Yi's prestige, he had no choice but to speak the truth. Lin Yi flipped through the account book and looked at it again and again. He turned to Honest Chai and said, "Tell me, what is written in this account book? What is the evidence of Wei Xiaodong's crimes?" The customs of the Heaven Island followed the ancient customs, and the numbers used in this account book were not the Arabic numerals used in the secular world, but the most standardized methods of calculation. Chapter 4368. As an assassin, Lin, he had studied many things before he started his career. Naturally, he was not an exception when it came to ancient Chinese numerals. The problem was, he could only recognize the meaning of these ancient numerals, but he was completely clueless about this unique method of accounting. Vice President, this account book was secretly recorded by me all these years. All of Wei Xiaodong's shady dealings of selling at a high price and reporting at a low price are recorded in it. Honest Chai explained carefully. Recording this account book was the only thing he had done all these years. He had spent a lot of effort and time on it. If not for the fact that Wei Xiaodong had turned him into a mere figurehead, he would not have had the time to investigate Wei Xiaodong's shady dealings. After all, no matter how tyrannical Wei Xiaodong was, these shady dealings could not be seen in the light. If he did not put in a lot of effort, others would not be able to detect it, let alone record down the detailed data. This was the result of Honest Chai's many years of hard work and investigation. Then why can't I see it? Lenny could not help but be puzzled. From his point of view, the things recorded in the book were completely out of sync. There was no logical order to speak of. Was this really the evidence of Wei Xiaodong's crimes? Honest Chai hesitated for a moment before deciding to reveal everything. Vice President, you might not know this, but I used the number 18 dislocation method. That's why outsiders would not be able to see any clues. I was forced to do this. If I did not use this method, and this account book fell into Wei Xiaodong's hands, then everything would be over. Number 18 dislocation method. Even though he was still confused, he had a feeling that it was amazing. Different professions were worlds apart. When he first heard this name, he would have thought it was an extremely powerful lost martial technique. That's right, the dislocation method is an extremely unique method of accounting. According to the order, there are a total of 36 different ways. This is a special accounting method created by the ancestors of the ancient merchant guild. Its purpose is to ensure secrecy and safety. If one does not know which method is used, even if this account book lands in someone else's hands, they would not be able to find any clues. Honest Chai explained in detail. I see. I didn't expect you to be such a bookkeeping expert. Lenny couldn't help but raise his opinion of Honest Chai. Although this guy looked timid and afraid of trouble, at least he was good at keeping accounts. He was indeed very skilled. This dislocation bookkeeping method sounded like an extremely complicated and profound knowledge. If there were no accidents, even the shopkeepers of many chambers of commerce might not be able to completely understand it. Vice Guild Leader is flattering me. I was forced to do this. Honest Chai smiled bitterly. This was a matter of life and death, especially when the opponent was the cunning Wei Xiaodong, no matter how cautious he was. However, If that's the case, won't you be the only one who can understand this account book? Even if it's given to the other higher-ups in the headquarters, they might not be able to understand it, right? Lin, he was a little troubled. After all, this account book was to be taken out as evidence of a crime. If no one could understand it, then the credibility of this account book would decrease. Well, it will be difficult for all the higher-ups in the headquarters to understand it. However, as long as they were told that it was the number 18 dislocation bookkeeping method, many of them should be able to understand it because many of them had worked their way up from branch shopkeepers. They are also experts in bookkeeping, Honest Chai deduced. That's good. Lenny nodded. As long as the professionals could understand it, then there wouldn't be a problem. He immediately ordered, "Make a copy of this account book. I will write a letter to explain the matter, then send it out together." Send it out? To the headquarters in the Middle Island? Honest Chai's spirit was roused, but he was still a little worried. I heard that Wei Xiaodong has a backer in the headquarters of Central Island. Unless you personally take a trip with the evidence, I'm afraid that just a letter and this account book won't have any effect. You don't have to worry about this. I don't intend to send it directly to the Middle Island, but to the North Island branch. Vice Guild leader Hong Zhong is there, and he's an old friend of mine. He won't skimp on this matter. Lin Yi smiled. As the Vice Guild leader, Hong Zhong was previously ostracized by the people in the Middle Island headquarters. This incident was a perfect opportunity. As long as he started an investigation with the evidence in the name of the Vice Guild leader, no one could stop him from returning to the Middle Island. Especially Wei Xiaodong's backers. With Hong Zhong holding the handle in his hands, they wouldn't dare to openly oppose him, or else they would be in trouble. Vice Guild leader Hong? That's great. I will go and make a copy of the account book now. Honest Chai was overjoyed. Different from the honorary Vice Guild leader in front of him, Hong Zhong was the Vice Guild leader with actual power. If he wanted to punish Wei Xiaodong, the branch shopkeeper, the honorary Vice Guild leader would be suspected of exceeding his authority, but the Vice Guild leader with actual power could make anyone unable to find fault with him. Moreover, Hong Zhong was the newly promoted Vice Guild leader and had always been operating in the North Island branch. He didn't have any interactions with Wei Xiaodong, so there was naturally no need to worry that he would shield Wei Xiaodong. After a while, Honest Chai passed the copy of the account book to Lin Yi, and Lin Yi had already written a letter to Hong Zhong. He immediately used the Hong Chamber of Commerce's internal channels to send it to the North Island branch as fast as possible. After doing all this, what Lin Yi had to do next was very simple. While taking over the Y-Arc branch, he had to keep a close eye on Wei Xiaodong. The rest was to wait patiently for Hong Zhong's response. However, although these things looked simple, they weren't easy to do. To Lin Yi, keeping a close eye on Wei Xiaodong wasn't difficult. The difficult part was how he was going to take over the huge Y-Arc branch by himself. This was very different from when he was managing the Tiandan Pavilion on Middle Island. The Tiandan Pavilion was his newly opened elixir shop, and he had Tian Chan and Sydney to help him out. There weren't many miscellaneous things to do. All he had to do was refine elixirs and sell them. Then someone would collect the money and keep the accounts. However, this Y-Arc branch, even if it wasn't one of the largest branches among the Hong Chamber of Commerce and was obviously inferior to the North Island branch, was still many times larger than Lin Yi's own Tiandan Pavilion. There were more than 100 people in charge of various affairs in the branch. Without sufficient experience, it would be impossible to manage it all. After all, Lin Yi wasn't an industry insider. Not only did he not have any management experience in this area, but he was also a layman when it came to business strategies and the like. There were many things he didn't understand at all. If he were to take over the Y-Arc branch, it was very likely that the entire branch would be paralyzed and unable to operate. Chapter 4369. However, if Lin Yi didn't personally take over, then Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao wouldn't be able to either. They were also amateurs, and they needed to return to the Morning Star Academy as soon as possible. They couldn't stay outside for long. Honest Chai, how about you help me take care of the Verdant Arc branch for the next period of time? Lin Yi suddenly suggested. Rather than forcing himself to do it, it would be better to leave it to a professional. Disregarding everything else, he had already witnessed this guy's bookkeeping ability. Moreover, he was a vice shopkeeper, and he had even testified against Wei Xiaodong. Asking him to help was a logical thing. Really? Honest Chai was elated upon hearing this, and quickly replied, "Thank you for your trust, Vice Chairman. I will definitely do my best to pacify the branch, and guarantee that nothing will go wrong." Then I'll leave it to you. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Yes. Honest Chai nodded his head. It was no wonder that he was so excited. No matter what, Lin Yi was an outsider, and from the looks of it, he was an outsider. Helping him take care of the branch was equivalent to being a temporary shopkeeper. This was an extremely rare opportunity. Honest Chai had been the vice shopkeeper of the Verdant Arc branch for many years, and he had always been conscientious. He had never made any mistakes, but he was still far from becoming a shopkeeper. The reason was simple. In order to become a shopkeeper of a branch, one had to have outstanding achievements, and the other had to have a strong backing in the headquarters of Central Island. Both were indispensable, and Wei Xiaodong was a classic example. On the other hand, Honest Chai did not have either of these qualities. However, the opportunity had finally arrived. Everyone knew that once one became a substitute shopkeeper, it meant that he wouldn't be far from becoming a real shopkeeper. If everything went smoothly, he would be able to prove Wei Xiaodong and help Lin Yi manage the Pedicle Arc branch. This in itself would be a great achievement. If he could take this opportunity to gain the appreciation of Lin Yi and Hong Zhong, then he would have a backer. The two conditions that were originally out of his reach would be fulfilled in an instant. Would the position of the branch manager be far away? Honest Chai was not an idiot. After thinking through everything, he quickly got into the right state of mind. He immediately went out in high spirits to help calm the crowd, leaving Lin Yi alone in the hall. This fellow was just being a yes man. How did he suddenly change into a different person? Let's hope this guy can get up. Lin Yi scratched his head as he muttered to himself before walking out. If this Honest Chai was useless, then it would be troublesome to take over the Wei Arc branch in the future. How was it? Xin Yan and Huang Xiaodao asked when they saw Lin Yi. Everything went smoothly. Now, let's see if this fella can take charge. Lin Yi pointed at Honest Chai. Haha, this type of yes-man coward, if he can take charge, then the sun will rise from the west. Wei Xiaodong, who was tied to the side, laughed coldly. At this moment, Honest Chai was preparing to say something to the crowd, but after being ridiculed by Wei Xiaodong, he immediately lost his momentum and became timid like before. He was, after all, a cowardly and honest person. After being bullied by Wei Xiaodong for so many years, a shadow had been left in his heart. Even when he gave Lin Yi the evidence, he was forced to do so. It was hard for him to go against Wei Xiaodong like this. In these few years, although Wei Xiaodong had yet to gain full control of the Wei Arc branch, he was already close to it. Not only Honest Chai, who was a mere figurehead, the others did not dare to go against him. Just like now, with just a casual sentence from him, everyone's expressions changed subtly. No matter which direction the sun rises from, you won't be able to see it. Wei Xiaodong was still feeling smug when Lin Yi walked over and slapped him until he fainted. Lin Yi curled his lips and said, "You already have one foot in the coffin. Why are you still spouting so much nonsense?" Looking at Wei Xiaodong's crooked neck and foaming at the mouth, everyone's expression changed again. They subconsciously shrunk their necks. This man was too cruel. Wei Xiaodong was lucky not to have been slapped to death by him. From today onwards, all matters in the Wei Arc branch will be handled by Honest Chai. If anyone wants to cause trouble, then I don't mind stretching my arms and legs. Is everyone clear? Lin Yi said to the crowd. With the previous example in front of them, how could anyone dare to say no? They immediately nodded their heads. In the eyes of these ordinary workers, regardless of whether it was Wei Xiaodong or Lin Yi, they were all high-up immortals, while they were mere mortals. A fight between immortals was a matter of immortals, and mortals like them only needed to obediently follow the orders of the victors. All right, I'll leave the rest to you. Lin Yi gave Honest Chai a look. He could only help up to this point. The only thing he could do was to intimidate the crowd so that they wouldn't dare to have any disloyal thoughts. As for the rest, it would depend on Honest Chai's own ability. Honest Chai nodded his head gratefully and turned to the crowd, arranging their tasks for the next day. Lin Yi was initially worried that Honest Chai only had the ability to keep accounts and would not be able to convince the crowd. After all, Honest Chai was too cowardly, and he did not have the aura of a leader. It was possible that the crowd would not listen to him, and he might even be a hopeless fool. However, Lin Yi soon found out that he was wrong. Honest Chai did not have the aura to intimidate the crowd, but he had a different style when handling matters. He was methodical and logical, and no matter who he arranged tasks for, no one would be able to find fault with it. Furthermore, he could make others feel that they were being put in an important position, and they would be willing to follow him. Over 100 people were arranged one by one, and not a single one of them frowned. Every single one of them happily accepted the task. Not only did Lin Yi have a whole new level of respect for Honest Chai, this was an extremely brilliant management style that others could not learn. After Honest Chai arranged everyone's tasks, and everyone dispersed to rest, Lin Yi could not help but say in bewilderment, "I was originally worried that you would not be able to control the situation, but who would have thought that you would be so good at managing people? It is a great loss for the Hong Merchant Association that a person of your standard is not able to become a branch manager." Vice President is overpraising me. Actually, it's nothing much. I've been the vice manager of this branch for more than 10 years, and I've personally done many of these things. Thus, I know who's most suitable for what job. In the past, I would often assign tasks to everyone, but ever since Wei Xiaodong appeared out of nowhere, I've stopped doing so. Honest Chai smiled bitterly. Chapter 4370. Don't be fooled by his weak personality. His professional skills were actually quite high. Otherwise, with his pitiful connections, he wouldn't have been able to become the vice manager of the Wei Arc branch. Make the best use of your talents. Looks like I have to recommend someone to Hong Zhong. It's a pity that a talent like you is only a vice manager. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. Now, that Hong Zhong was in the position of the vice president. The biggest problem was that, in addition to being ostracized by others in the headquarters of Middle Island, he lacked outstanding talents. As a dignified vice president, he had to at least control a few branches. Otherwise, no one would listen to him, and he would become a commander without an army. As for this Honest Chai, even though he didn't have much contact with him, Lin Yi could at least confirm that with his abilities, he was more than qualified to be a branch manager. If he could get close to Hong Zhong in the future, he wouldn't be mistreated, and at the same time, he would be able to support Hong Zhong, killing two birds with one stone. Thank you, Vice Manager, for your recognition. Honest Chai was overjoyed. He had been waiting for this sentence. He had a faint premonition that this honorary vice president would be a benefactor in his life. Whether or not he would be able to become the manager of the branch depended entirely on this person. Do a good job. I won't mistreat you. Go. Lin Yi nodded. Yes, I won't disappoint you. Honest Chai immediately left with 100 times more energy. He wasn't planning on sleeping tonight. In order to repay Lin Yi's kindness, his top priority right now was to find evidence of the crimes recorded in the account book, other than managing the branch. Only then would he be able to pin Wei Xiaodong down with one move and make sure that he'd never be able to make a comeback. Kindness and authority. Buying people's hearts. When did you learn this? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao walked over and laughed as they looked at Honest Chai's back. Hee, I didn't learn it, but I've experienced this many times, so I naturally learned it. Lin Yi smiled. The more things he'd been through, the more experienced he'd become when it came to handling things. Even though he wasn't that old, he had experienced all sorts of twists and turns. His experience wasn't something his peers could compare to. So he's self-taught? How thick-skinned? Wang Xinyan said with a smile. She exchanged a glance with Huang Xiaodao before asking, "What do you plan to do next, then?" "I've already written a letter to Hong Zhong and asked him to deal with this matter. What we need to do next is to stay in the branch and wait for news from him. Lin Yi said with a relaxed expression. He had already done what he could. How would he deal with the results afterwards? It all depended on Hong Zhong's actions. All right, then. Since that's the case, the two of us can go back, Wang Xinyan said. Earlier, they had agreed to return after dinner with the divine nun of the East Sea. Now that there was nothing else to do, it was inconvenient for the two of them to spend the night outside. All right, I'll send you off. Lin Yi nodded. There's no need. You should look after this guy, in case he wakes up and causes trouble. Wang Xinyan pointed at Wei Xiaodong, who had fainted after being slapped by Lin Yi. Lin Yi thought about it and slapped the unconscious Wei Xiaodong once more. He then dragged the guest that was sent flying out like a dead dog and tied him up. He then called Honest Chai over and had him watch over them personally. There's no problem now. Compared to sending the two of you back, I'll send you two back first. Compared to sending you back, everything else is just a passing cloud. All right. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They felt a warmth in their hearts and enjoyed it. The three of them chatted and laughed. Lin Yi sent the two girls all the way to the inn where the Morning Star Academy students were staying. He watched them go up the stairs before returning to the Hong Merchants Association. On the second day, the news of the internal strife in the Hong Merchants Association spread like wildfire. It quickly spread throughout the streets and alleys of Weiqian City. After all, this was one of the largest merchants associations in Weiqian City. Its reputation was not inferior to that of those influential figures. The news of Wei Xiaodong being controlled and the Hong Merchants Association changing hands quickly reached Qin Deli's ears. He immediately turned pale with fright. After being snubbed at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency last night, he thought that the matter had come to an end. Who would have thought that Chang Shutian's death was just a small prologue? The best part was yet to come. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's Ling Yi and the two personal disciples of the Divine Nun of the Eastern Sea. They broke into the Hong Merchants Association overnight and suppressed Wei Xiaodong and the two guest experts. From then on, the Hong Merchants Association changed hands. Now, everyone in Weiqian City was talking about this matter vividly. The entire Weiqian City had almost become a storyteller's paradise. Qin Deli instantly panicked. He did not care about what happened to the Hong Merchants Association. Even if the entire Weiqian branch was burned down, it had nothing to do with him. However, Wei Xiaodong being controlled by someone else was fatal. It was not that he cared about this so-called cousin who was separated from him by God knows how many layers of relatives he had. The key was that Wei Xiaodong and Qin Deli were on the same boat. Wei Xiaodong and Qin Deli were on the same boat. Wei Xiaodong knew almost everything about him. If Wei Xiaodong could not withstand the interrogation and spilled the beans, not only would Wei Xiaodong be finished, even Qin Deli would be buried with him. No, he had to quickly think of a way to get Wei Xiaodong out. Qin Deli did not have time to think carefully. He hurriedly requested to see the three giants. He had to turn the situation around before the situation worsened. At this time, the three mountain opening stage giants of the Morning Star Academy were gathered together, preparing to attend the selection today. Seeing Qin Deli enter, their gazes all fell on him. What do you want again? Ling Yuanqing said with a slight frown. Although he did not lose his temper on the spot, what happened last night had made him rather angry. Now, he naturally did not have a good attitude towards Qin Deli. The gazes of the three giants fell on him. Qin Deli only felt his body sink, and he almost knelt down. Clearly, it was not only Ling Yuanqing who had an opinion about what happened last night. The Divine Nun of the Eastern Sea and Wei Hebei also did not like him. Disciple greets the three deans. Although Qin Deli was somewhat afraid, he had already been forced to this extent. If he did not quickly think of a way to turn the situation around, he might die a horrible death. He could only bite the bullet and continue. Disciple has just heard of something. The outside world is in an uproar. They say that the disciples of our Morning Star Academy helped the wicked and attacked the Hong Merchants Association with outsiders last night. Now, They have even taken control of the branch manager, Wei Xiaodong. This matter has a great impact and is detrimental to our academy's reputation. I hope the three deans can investigate this. There's actually such a thing? The three giants were slightly stunned. With their lofty status, ordinary people did not even have the opportunity to speak with them. Unless someone specially reported it, these rumors would not have reached their ears so quickly. Chapter 4371. It's absolutely true. This disciple doesn't dare to lie at all, Qin Deli hurriedly said. The three leaders looked at each other. The relationship between the Morning Star Academy and the Hong Chamber of Commerce had always been good. Now that the Crepe branch had suddenly met with such a change, and it was related to a disciple of the Academy, it was only right for them to ask about it. Who is it? Ling Yuanqing's face darkened as he asked. Although the Morning Star Academy encouraged their disciples to compete and never forbade them from causing trouble, but if the other party was the Hong Merchant Guild that they had a good relationship with, then it would be a little unreasonable. Yes. Qin Deli pretended to hesitate and stole a glance at the divine nun of the East Sea's expression. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and say it. Ling Yuanqing frowned. It's Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao, Qin Deli said through gritted teeth. With that, Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei could not help but look at the divine nun of the East Sea. They immediately fell silent. Since it was a matter between Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao, they obviously had to let the divine nun of the East Sea decide herself. This was a most basic form of respect. The divine nun of the East Sea was taken aback. She recalled that Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao had indeed returned rather late last night, but they were not angry at all. She immediately said, I'll only know what happened after I hear it from Yin and Xiaotao themselves. A moment later, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao appeared in front of the crowd and greeted the three heavyweights one by one. They smiled after hearing Qin Deli's speech. Master, martial uncles, the two of us did indeed go to the Hong Merchant Guild with Ling Yi last night, and we did capture Wei Xiaodong. The two women looked at each other and replied unhurriedly. Is there really such a thing? Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei raised their eyebrows. From what they remembered, the two of them were obedient girls who never caused trouble. Why would they suddenly do something like this? The divine nun of the Eastern Sea was also a little surprised. Qin Deli, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but feel pleased with himself. It seemed that he had made the right decision to come here. As long as the divine nun of the Eastern Sea didn't protect Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao, then she wouldn't help an outsider like Ling Yi. However, what the divine nun of the East Sea said next it almost made Qin Deli spit out a mouthful of blood. Both of you are not hurt, right? Why didn't you tell your master about this kind of thing? What if something happened to you? What should we do then? The divine nun of the Eastern Sea pulled the two women over and asked in concern. Qin Deli was dumbfounded on spot. He had not had much contact with the divine nun of the Eastern Sea in the past. How could he know that this so-called monk was actually a person who would protect her children to the core? No, Wei Xiaodong and the other two were guest practitioners. Wouldn't it be embarrassing for you if they could get hurt like that? Xinyan smiled, and Huang Xiaodao nodded in agreement. That's good. You can go out and train. However, you have to be careful. If it really doesn't work out, ask me to stand up for you. Don't force yourself, all right? The divine nun of the Eastern Sea warned. We know. We won't make you worry, Master. The two girls hugged the divine nun of the East Sea's arms and smiled. Qin Deli's face turned green when he saw this scene. He could only turn to Ling Yuanqing for help. He hoped that the dean could stand out and uphold justice. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to salvage the situation today, he would probably get off lightly with a scolding. My two nieces, why did you go to the Hong Merchant Guild last night? Can you tell us? Ling Yuanqing was the dean after all. Even if he had no intentions of punishing the two girls, he had to understand the situation at the very least, just in case something happened in the future and they were forced into a passive position. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea glanced at him, and nodded at Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. She nodded at Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. Although she was their master and wouldn't let them suffer any losses, she still had to explain the specifics of the matter to everyone. Reporting to Marshal Uncle, the two of us went to the Hong Chamber of Commerce last night to get rid of Wei Xiaodong, the cunning, treacherous, and evildoer. He had once set up a trap to harm the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Not only did he collude with pirates to rob his own goods, but he also brought them back to Hong Dali. Not only did he collude with pirates to steal his goods, he even forced the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to pay 300,000 spiritual jade. Wang Xinyan explained. Oh, something like that actually happened? The three mountain opening powerhouses could not help but be rather shocked. They all had some understanding of Wei Xiaodong, but they did not know he was actually so cunning and shameless. As the manager of a branch of the Hong Merchant Guild, he actually colluded with pirates to steal his own goods and blackmail the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Something like that was truly unheard of. Deans, there's a misunderstanding here. Qin Deli hurriedly explained. Back then, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency did indeed use this excuse to spread the news. They even brought people to the Hong Merchant Guild, but the truth proved that they did not have any credible evidence. They don't have any credible evidence. All of this is just something they fabricated out of thin air to cover up the fact that they didn't do a good job in protecting the escorts and restore the agency's image. Are you saying that we distorted the truth and deliberately framed Wei Xiaodong? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao sneer at Qin Deli. Qin Deli, you've got some guts to speak ill of my disciple right in front of this old lady, yeah? The divine nun of the East Sea's gaze was also hostile. She had never liked Qin Deli, yet this guy actually dared to say that Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao framed Wei Xiaodong. Was he not looking to die? A mountainous pressure immediately descended on Qin Deli's head. With a plop, Qin Deli was forced to kneel on the spot. He immediately became extremely terrified, and his eyes almost began to bleed. The same situation had already happened at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency last night, except that the one who died back then was Cheng Qitian. Now it was his turn. Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei looked at one another, but they ignored this. In their eyes, although Qin Deli was also a purchasing officer, he was just a nobody, and he had no self-awareness at all. They had yet to settle the score with him for lying about the military yesterday. Yet he had come to provoke the divine nun of the East Sea on his own today. What did he take the mountain-opening powerhouses for? Even if an ant like him died, he would die for nothing. They would not even glance at him. Qin Deli could not help but piss his pants in fright. If he were given a chance to start over, he would never dare to come in and snitch on them, even if he fled to the end of the world. At that moment, he was tempted to slap himself in the face. He had really been kicked in the head by a donkey. He actually thought that the three powerhouses would believe him. Now, he had failed to turn the situation around, and he had lost his life instead. He really could not cry even if he wanted to. Qin Deli completely believed that he was about to follow in Cheng Qitian's footsteps. He had already lost all hope, but after a while, he discovered that the pressure above his head did not grow any heavier. His body only spat out blood in a horrible shape. It had not reached the point where he would die on the spot. Chapter 4372. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea was not a murderous demon after all. She had only killed Cheng Qitian last night because he had insulted her and threatened Huang Xiaodao. As her disciple, she naturally had to stand up for her disciple. However, today's matter had not reached the point where she needed to kill. Spare me, headmaster of the Eastern Sea. I didn't say anything bad about the two ladies. I just felt that they might have been used. Qin Deli was quick-witted and hurriedly seized the last chance to explain. Hearing this, the killing intent on the divine nun of the Eastern Sea dissipated. In her heart, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao were not unreasonable people, but it was not impossible to say that they had been deceived and used. You're slandering me. Huang Xiaodao immediately panicked. This guy purposely said that the two of them had been used. He clearly wanted to turn the spearhead to Lin Yi. He really did not give up. That's right. You purposely tried to drive a wedge between us and Sister Xiaotao Sr. What are your intentions? Wang Xinyan questioned coldly. No, it's not that. Please calm down. The world is dangerous. You may know a person's face, but not his heart. That Ling Yi clearly knew that you were the direct disciples of headmaster of the Eastern Sea Academy, but he still purposely brought you to the Hong merchant group. Anyone with a discerning eye would know that he was using the two of you, Qin Deli said earnestly. Using the tiger's skin as a flag, he clearly wanted to use the two of you to tie the Morningstar Academy to the Hong merchant group. As soon as he said this, the expressions of the three leaders changed slightly. From an outsider's point of view, this matter could indeed be interpreted in such a way. It was impossible for a single person to go against the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Ling Yi might really have such an intention by dragging Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao along. Qin Deli was very observant and knew that his words had an effect. He hurriedly struck while the iron was hot and continued. No matter who is right or wrong in the matter between the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Hong Merchant Group, our Morningstar Academy has no need or reason to interfere. Furthermore, that Ling Yi used the excuse of investigating Wei Xiaodong. I would like to ask, where did a small escort like him get the right to do so? In the end, he was just avenging a personal grudge, yet he still used flowery words to deceive and use the two ladies. Such despicable people deserve to die. The three leaders nodded slightly. What Wei Xiaodong said made sense. Even if there was something wrong with Wei Xiaodong, it was up to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to deal with it. It was not up to an unrelated escort to come knocking on their door in the middle of the night to capture him. Humph, who said that Ling Yi isn't qualified? Wang Xinyan glared at Qin Deli and said coldly, he is the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Wei Xiaodong offended the higher-ups of his family. Shouldn't he clean up the family? Honorary vice guild leader? The three big shots all had a look of surprise on their faces. The honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. No matter where he went, he could not be considered a small figure. That Ling Yi looked ordinary and didn't reveal anything. They didn't expect him to have such an identity. That's just what he calls himself. If he's really the honorary vice president, how could he be a lowly escort in the equal of Heaven Escort Agency? Qin Deli hurriedly questioned. Several months ago, my senior brother and I were on the Northern Island. We even had a meal and chatted with the new vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Hong Zhong. Vice President Hong confirmed this to me in person. Are you trying to say that even I'm lying? Huang Xiaotao said coldly. This? Qin Deli immediately choked. He obviously wanted to say that, but when he sneaked a glance at the divine nun of the East Sea's expression, he could only force it back down. Doubting an outsider like Ling Yi was fine, but if he doubted Huang Xiaotao as well, then he would really be looking to die. Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei looked at the divine nun of the East Sea at the same time. Up to this point, there was no point in arguing any further. They could only wait for the divine nun of the East Sea to make the decision herself. I believe my disciple won't lie, the divine nun of the East Sea said indifferently. Believing Huang Xiaodao was obviously equivalent to believing Ling Yi. No one was surprised by this. She had always been a protective person. Between an outsider like Qin Deli and her own direct disciple, it was obvious who to choose. There was no suspense at all. Thank you, Master. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao hugged the divine nun of the East Sea happily, one on the left and one on the right. Qin Deli's face was ashen. He was so gloomy that he almost coughed up blood again. He said rather reluctantly, but is there something else? The divine nun of the East Sea did not give him the opportunity to speak at all. She directly interrupted him. Why are you so nosy? Are you nosy, mother? You're the one complaining every time, and now you're even trying to accuse my disciple of lying. Do you not want to be a purchasing manager anymore? Or do you not want to stay in the academy anymore? No. I'm fine now. I'll be taking my leave. Qin Deli scrambled out of fright, hurriedly fleeing for his life from the room. The divine nun of the East Sea was a major figure in the mountain establishment realm. She was definitely in existence who meant what she said. If he really angered her, not only would he lose his job, but he would even lose his life. Serve him right. Looking at Qin Deli's sorry figure, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao looked at each other and smiled. This crafty person was quite good at quibbling. It was a pity that in front of their master-disciple relationship with the divine nun of the East Sea, he was simply asking for humiliation. He deserved it. The Morningstar Academy held the selection ceremony as scheduled, and the focus of the entire Weiwan city shifted to the selection ceremony. The discussions about the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the streets became much quieter, and with less attention from the outside world, there were naturally fewer disturbances. The entire Hong merchant group also gradually returned to normal under Honest Chai's management. Everyone was no longer in fear and trepidation, and they gradually began to accept reality. The era of Wei Xiaodong had already passed, and the Velvet City branch was about to welcome a new beginning. In these few days, aside from having people keep a close eye on Wei Xiaodong, Lin Yi did not idle around. Right now was the crucial period of investigating Wei Xiaodong. Apart from Honest Chai's account book, how much more decisive evidence could be found would depend on the harvest during this period of time. Under Honest Chai's hard work, the harvest in these few days was not small. Seeing Wei Xiaodong's shameless and flawless business being dug out by Honest Chai, Lin Yi was overjoyed, but at the same time, he could not help but sigh in admiration. Honest Chai was truly a talent. At least when it came to business management, auditing, and bookkeeping, this fellow could be said to be a true expert. In comparison, Wei Xiaodong's entry-level bookkeeping methods were simply child's play in front of him. Very quickly, Honest Chai found the whereabouts of the 300,000 spiritual jades that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had compensated. Lin, he immediately sent someone to inform Qi Wenhan. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.